So I set out to try and work out, is Tailwind appropriate for use inside Bricks Builder, inside page builders, inside of WordPress? And as part of that discovery, I was trying to play around with it, and I thought the best way to do this is to go out and actually build some stuff. So I pressed record. I tried to build this page here that you see on my screen currently, and today's video just shows you everything that I learned in doing so. Now, I know that there are quite a few CSS frameworks that we have the options of implementing into Bricks Builder. Now, the reason that I did start with Tailwind is because it is the most popular CSS framework. And if you're coming from the WordPress ecosystem, you're used to just looking at something and going, how the hell do you do that? And you go to Google, you type in your question and an answer comes up, because WordPress is so popular that somebody's more than likely dealt with the problem you're facing and they have a solution posted on the internet. So you have a problem, search it in Google, the answer comes up, you can put that into your project, move to the next problem. And so that comes with popularity. If something's popular, there's a lot of documentation, there's a lot of content out there. And so Tailwind being the most popular CSS framework, the most content is out there on that framework. It makes me learning it a lot easier. Now, the other reason that I do like Tailwind, and it's the one that I tried to use over Oxyprops and some of the other ones out there, is that the other ones that come up in videos from other people that other people recommend in the WordPress Facebook groups, they're CSS frameworks that only work in WordPress. And so Tailwind works in WordPress and outside of WordPress. And I like that. So for example, if I integrate Tailwind into Bricks Builder and that becomes I learn Tailwind and I get to know it like the back of my hand. If at any stage I wanted to go out and get a job for something like a web agency or a software company, I can use Tailwind and the CSS framework outside of WordPress to develop front-end applications for software. So I do like that the time that I spend learning this framework can be applied out of the WordPress ecosystem as well as in it. So that's my explanation as to why I have decided to cover Tailwind as the first CSS framework. But I don't want to go ahead and force a round peg into a square hole, being that if a CSS framework like Tailwind doesn't work as best as it possibly can inside of Bricks Builder, or it actually slows down my workflow, then I'm not really going to use it, because most of my work right now is in Bricks Builder. Now, throughout today's video, I'll point out where I think it's a little bit cumbersome and where it needs to be improved. And along this video, you'll also see how using Tailwind can really speed up our ability to build websites. There's things that you can do using Tailwind that you can't do inside of Bricks Builder currently, like a CSS grid. I use it heavily in today's video, and without it, it would have slowed down me building this website today a lot. So it really does speed up me building today's website, but it does have some drawbacks. So there's things that, do slow down the process when you're using Tailwind, but there are some plugins that are soon to be released that are going to help overcome these. And I do cover them in today's video. I think when some of these other plugins that are going to be released in the near future do come onto the market and help us use Tailwind inside of Bricks Builder a lot easier, I think we're going to see a lot more people gravitating over to using Tailwind inside of Bricks Builder. So if you're watching today's video, I would say that you're early to the process. You will see those problems that I do face through today's video, but it is good knowing that people are trying to overcome these. And I think, these are things that can be fixed. I really do feel like it. Now, before we get into actually going and building the website, I want to show you what the website is and some of the things that we set up. So this is the page that we're going to design, but we actually start with the mobile first approach, because Tailwind as a CSS framework works mobile first, meaning you design the mobile layout and then you design up the breakpoints. So it's the reverse of what Bricks Builder usually does out of the box. So we design the mobile and then we'd go to something like the large device and then we keep going up and up. So this is going to be the mobile design that we're going to complete today. So it looks like this. And then as we go to the larger breakpoint, you can see it changes here. So now, in terms of the behind the scenes code that we're going to be using today, this is going to be the end product. So Winden is the plugin that you need to install to connect Tailwind to WordPress and be able to be used inside of Bricks Builder. And so I'm going to leave a link in the description below to go and check out the Winden plugin. If you want to go and connect Tailwind, this is the plugin that you need, Winden. And this is the settings page for Winden. So we start with this looking like a blank slate and then we build it up. So don't worry if none of this makes any sense. We actually build this up throughout today's video. video. So I'll show you what this is all doing. We're going to register a custom font here. We set up some CSS properties down here, so some custom variables that then if we go up to the Tailwind config, we connect those CSS variables to Tailwind. So here we're registering our color palette into Tailwind so that we can use them inside of Bricks Builder when we're building our website. We'll do some other things that I'm not going to get into just yet, but by the end of today's video, you will know what all of this means. And again, I started as a beginner. Looking at this would have it went completely over my head. And once you get in and watch today's video, you'll realize that this is actually, it's not complicated stuff. Like you can learn all of this and get an understanding of it quite easily. So don't be overwhelmed. Now, before we jump in and start doing today's tutorial and going through how Tailwind actually works and building this website, I want to cover what Tailwind is. Now, if you go to tailwindcss.com and you click on docs, you're going to reference this a lot as you're getting familiar with how Tailwind works. Now, coming back, I have a blank page here, and let's go ahead and add a div because you're going to be building your entire website using divs, not sections or containers or blocks like you might normally be used to. Now, let's say in this div, we want to add a heading. So I'll add the heading element there, and we might add some basic text under that. If I want to go and make this background for the div match the navy color that we've registered here in Tailwind, all I have to do is on this div, I add a class, so CSS class, BG-navy and press enter, and now that's navy. If I want to make this heading a white color, I just click on the heading and I go over to here and I do text-white and press enter, and now it's white. So we're designing our website over here by applying CSS classes to the elements. And that's exactly what Tailwind is. You build your website by applying utility classes, CSS classes to style your elements. And you have a whole list of them here. If I search for something like background color and we click into it here, you can see BG hyphen and then the color. This is how you apply your background. And that's what I did here on the div. I did BG hyphen navy and that made it the background navy. Over here, text hyphen white, we changed the text color. If I went here and wrote text color and went into here, you can see text hyphen and then the color. That's how you change the font color. So let's say this text here, I want to make this white as well. I would go text and then white. And then if I want to make it larger, I would go text, let's do XL and enter. And now that's scaled it up. If I want to add a margin on the top here, I write MT and then a hyphen and then 4. And that adds a margin top of 4. And then let's just say we want to center the heading and basic text on the page. We could wrap these in another div like that. So I'll pull them in there. And then on this div, we'll give it a max width. So max hyphen W hyphen, and we could do 4XL like that. So now you can see it has that max width. And now to center it on the page, we could write MX. So margin on the left and right, auto, enter. And now it's centered on the page. So MX auto centers it on the page with a max width of 4XL. And these are all classes that are part of the Tailwind framework. So if we go back into here and we search for max width, and there it is there. If I search for max hyphen W hyphen 4XL, you can see that is a predefined class in the Tailwind framework, and it sets it to 56 rem, which if your base font size is 16 pixels will be 896 pixels. And if that doesn't make any sense, I cover all of this in today's video. But that is the overview of what Tailwind is. Tailwind is a CSS framework that basically has a whole list of predefined CSS classes that you apply to your elements inside of Bricks Builder to style them and build the website that you want. But you can also show and hide things on different breakpoints. That's all part of the framework. So for example, this heading here, let's say we want to show it on the default here, the mobile, but let's just say at the medium breakpoint here, we want to hide it. So all we would need to do is come over to here, and by default, it's going to be visible. So we don't need to change anything. But then on the medium and up, we can write MD, so medium, and then colon, and then write hidden and press enter. And now by default, if we go back here, it displays block by default, but then as it goes up to the medium, when it hits the medium or greater, again, because Tailwind's a mobile first CSS framework, medium or greater, it's hidden. So now it's hidden for all the different ones there. So now we're styling elements, showing and hiding them. We can lay them out all just by applying CSS classes. So I'll end the introduction into what utility classes are and how we're going to be using them inside of Bricks Builder today. But that should give you a quick introduction of what you can expect from today's video. So let's let's get into actually going out and building today's design, starting with installing the plugins. So here I am in a demo website that I've set up for today's tutorial. So let's jump in and install Bricks Builder. So we need to go to appearance and themes, sorry, add new, and we'll go upload theme and then choose file. And then I'll choose bricks and go open and install now. And then I'll activate. Now it's always good habit to install a child theme. So let's go to appearance and themes and we'll go add new. And then I'll go upload theme, choose file, and then the bricks child theme, open and install now, and then we'll activate. So now that we've done that, we need to install the plugin that's going to allow us to use Tailwind inside a Bricks Builder. So to do that, we'll go down to plugins and add new and upload a plugin, and I'm going to choose one from my computer, and the plugin's name is Winden, and I'll go open and install now and activate plugin. Now the reason that I had to upload that Winden plugin from my computer and not find it in the WordPress repository is that there isn't a free version of it. So it is a paid plugin, but it works really well. And if you're serious about giving Tailwind a go inside of Bricks Builder and WordPress, as far as I know, it's the best plugin to do that. So I'm going to leave a link to the plugin in the description below. It is my affiliate link and it should land you on a page like this. And you can see if you click down here, you can get a lifetime deal for $99 for unlimited websites. So it's not the most expensive plugin in the world and it works really well. Before you do go out and buy it, I would also suggest watching this entire video just to get an understanding of, if this is right for you. If Tailwind looks like something that it might be something you want to try, I wouldn't buy it until the end of this video if you have no idea how Tailwind works or if it's right for you. Because the purpose of today's video is to show you how you could go and use it, what it actually does, and you'll know by the end of the video if, this is something that you need. So now that we've installed Bricks Builder, which is the theme to build our website, and we've installed Winden, which is going to allow us to build our website using Tailwind, we're ready to start going into the Winden settings and configuring a couple of things. So let's go down to Winden, and you'll see the plugin has 3 different tabs. We have our base CSS, our Tailwind config, which looks like this, and then some general settings. Now, the way that this is structured is from left to right. Your left-hand side where you write a little bit of CSS, this will be the tab that you access more frequently as you're building your website. That's why it opens up on page load. The Tailwind config, you do update this as you build your website, and this is one that you will access here and there. We'll get more into details on what this is actually doing. I had never used Tailwind before about 2 weeks ago, and after playing around with it, it's actually not that advanced. I'm not a skilled developer or anything like this. It's actually quite simple when I show you what this is actually doing. So if this doesn't make sense to you and you think it's like JavaScript or it just looks like a language that you don't know how to write code in, don't worry, you don't really need to be an advanced developer to use this. Now, coming into the general tab, we do need to set up a couple of things here, and then we most likely won't come back to this at all. It's just like a set and forget sort of tab. So if we go down, you can see there's a couple of settings here. The ones that we want to activate. So we want to activate these 2 settings here. Use the cached CSS file instead of the CDN, but don't use the cached minified CSS for the admin role. You could build your website and come back and activate these, but I'm the type of person that's going to forget to do that, and it doesn't really hinder us developing our website by doing this. So I think as a fail safe, it's probably best just to activate these when you get going. So let's just save the changes now. Now, looking at this base CSS tab, we have our Tailwind base, Tailwind components, Tailwind utilities, and then we have this at layer thing. This is just giving you an example of how you could go and write code into this section. You can actually just get rid of all of this. You don't really need to have it. Again, it's just an example. So let's just save that. So we're starting from scratch. And throughout this video, I will touch on what these are actually doing. But again, I had no idea what any of this meant 2 weeks ago. So if you're a little bit concerned at this stage, don't worry. It's actually quite straightforward. Now, the next tab that I want to head on over to is the Tailwind config. So this is where we go and set up things to be used throughout Tailwind. And it's really powerful. It's incredible how this works. Now, looking at this section, I was going to go through what this actually means and how it's structured. But as we go and build our website, we will be coming into this area and adding things. And I think when you see me add things into this, like we have a problem that we're trying to solve when we're building the website. So then I come back into here and I add stuff into here, and then I use that in my design to solve that problem. I think if we do it that way, you will actually understand better what this is doing than me just going through what it means right now. So let's now go and create a page and edit it with Bricks Builder. And then let's just run through out of the box how Bricks Builder works. And then we'll go through some of the tweaks that we need to make inside of the Bricks Builder settings to make it work with Tailwind. So let's go ahead and go to pages and add new. And I'm just going to call this the home page, and we'll go publish, and we will edit with bricks. Now I'm just going to zoom out to 100% just so we're designing at the actual size here, because we are going to be trying to recreate this design as close as we possibly can. So now that we're in here and building our page, let's go ahead and click to add a section. Now, if we have a look on this section here, and again, we haven't changed any settings inside of Bricks Builder, we can see that adding this section here has added a section HTML tag and its display flex. Now, with Tailwind, you're actually specifying using CSS classes everything that you're doing to design your website. So we wouldn't actually go into a section here and go display and have it say flex. We would actually come up to here and write the CSS class flex, and then the Tailwind CSS framework would make this section a flex box. So we actually want to disable all this automatic stuff that comes through using the Bricks Builder editor. So what we're going to do, we're going to go back to our dashboard, and we're going to go to bricks, and we're going to go to settings. So here in Bricks Builder settings, we want to go over to the builder tab, and we want to scroll down, and where it says element actions, we can set the default type of element that Bricks adds onto the page when we choose to wrap an element, insert an element, and insert a layout. And what this means is, let's just say we have this container here. If we right click where it says wrap, the default is a block, and the default is to insert a block. And this is if we go insert a block and click on the block, it is display flex. So out of the box, Bricks Builder is trying to use flex boxes to do the layouts. And so that's why things are getting added as a flex item. We actually don't want that. So let's go up to here, and where it says element actions, let's set all of these to divs. So I'll set that to div, and we'll set that to div as well. And we'll go down and save settings. So now if I come back into the builder and I reload the page, so now if I click to add a section, if I click back on the section, you can still see that it is a display flex, and the container is display flex. So Bricks Builder is still using its default elements of sections and containers and giving them that flex layout, but we don't want to do that. So how do we get around that? When we're building our site using Tailwind, we only want to use divs, and then we set their layout properties using CSS classes. So where this section here is a flex box and then it has a container inside it, let's go ahead and just delete this, and we're going to add a div. So I'll go up to here and go add div, and then this div, let's go right click and let's insert another div inside it. And this could be like a section there, and this could be a wrap in there, and we'll insert into here one more. So insert div, and this could be like col1, and I'll duplicate this. So duplicate and duplicate. So col1, col2, and col3. And now let's go ahead and set this so 3 columns are sitting next to each other on the horizontal axis. So if we go up to our wrap here, we can see that it's a display block now. So it's not flex, it's a display block. And that's a display block because by default in your browser, a div is a block element. So let's turn this into a flex box. So to do that, we can come up to here, and because we have Winden enabled, we can write CSS classes in here from Tailwind and it will work in the builder. So if I write flex here and press enter, that applies a flex box to our wrap. So now these 3 columns are sitting next to each other. And this is a really good segue into the next section that I wanted to cover, which is how did I know what this flex class was? Where do we find the list of classes that we can use from Tailwind inside our website to build it? And the way that I found what this class was, if you go to tailwindcss.com and go to the docs, this is where all the classes that you'll use to build your website are going to be. So you can do Command K, that opens up the search. And if I search for flex, and there it is there, flex box and flex grid, and click on it, it tells me all the classes that Tailwind gives me to lay out my content. And Winden is that plugin that bridges the gap and pulls these or allows them to be used inside a Bricks Builder. So if we go down, we get example code. So if we add flex as a CSS class to the container and then add these classes to the children, we would get this layout up here. Now, if we click on flex basis, we can go down and see that if we wanted to have a column that was a quarter, and then a half, we would set it up like this. Throughout this video, we will be using, flex flex basis. We will be using some CSS grids and stuff like that. 2 weeks ago, I didn't really understand what the hell was going on. So this is stuff that you can learn quite fast, and doing these layouts inside Tailwind just seems to be quite fast and easy to do, which you'll see in today's video. But yeah, if you're looking at this and going, flex basis, I don't know, this Tailwind thing's too complex. This actually makes using this like easier than if you were writing your own custom CSS. Let's go ahead and recreate this layout here inside our Bricks Builder demo page that we're creating, just to show you sort of how this works. And then we'll actually get into designing the real template that we've been looking to do in today's video. So let's go and apply flex and flex row to the parent, and then the flex basis to the children. So up here on our section, let's just give this a background just so we can see what's happening. So I'll go style, background, and then in here, let's make this a light orange color. And then our wrap, I'm going to give this another color as well, maybe a light purple like that. And then our columns, let's give them a color as well. So I'll make this a solid purple, and this one could be a solid blue, and then this one is going to be a solid green color. Now, I also want to show you, let's come back here and search for max width into here, and you can see these are all the CSS classes that we can use and what it's doing behind the scenes to set the max width. So you can get an idea of what it's doing there. That's how you'd set the full width there. So let's just say we want to set it to 1024 pixels. So we'd use this CSS class here. So if we go back here and apply that there and press enter, now that is the width of it. So now we also need to center it on the page. So let's go back to here and search for margin and go here. So now we get all the CSS classes we can use and what they're doing, but I'm going to search for MX Auto, and I know that this means margin on the x-axis, so left and right, set it to auto, which is going to center it. So if we come back in here to our wrap and I write MX-auto and enter it, now it's centered on the page. So now let's go ahead and make these equal. So on the wrap here, we have our flex CSS class here, and by default, it's a flex row. So that's all looking good. So now what we need to do is click on the children here, and you can also come back here and write flex basis if you've forgotten. It's very fast to find things. Let's go down. So we want to do this. So it's a quarter. So I'll copy that and we can put that there. And now that's a quarter of the width. And then this one as well is going to have the same CSS class. So we'll apply that there. And then this third column is going to be the half, and we'll apply that there. So now we have a quarter, and a half. Now let's give them some space. So let's go up to the wrap. And if we go back to Tailwind and we search for gap and search in here, it says utilities for controlling gutters between grid and flexbox items. So you can see we can apply no gap, which would be gap 0. You can apply gap to just the Y axis, so the tops and bottoms, and you can apply it to just the X, which is the left and the right. So what we want to do is we just want an overall gap. So you can search, if we search for say gap 4. So if we apply this CSS class here, gap-4, this adds 1 rem of gap. So let's go back here, and with our wrap selected, let's just apply that. So gap-4 and press enter. And now that has spaced them out. Now what I'm going to do is in each of these columns, I'm just going to quickly add some basic text, because if we don't do that, it's not going to output on the front end because these would have 0 height. So let's save that. And then let's preview this and preview this on the front end. So now it looks like this. Now, one of the most important things that you need to do before you go and build your website using Tailwind and Bricks Builder is the next step. So if I just get the width of this gap here, you can see that it is 10 pixels. But if we go back to the Tailwind docs, this should actually be 1 rem, which is 16 pixels. So why should this be 16, but this is showing 10? If I right click and inspect element here and have a look on the HTML element, and we go to computed and we go down, you can see the font size is set here by the Bricks Builder theme to be 10 pixels. But Tailwind actually uses 100% as its default value there, and 100% in most people's browsers is going to be 16 pixels, unless they've gone into their settings inside their browser and changed that. I'll leave a link to a blog post that I wrote about this a couple of years ago, where it explains this whole process and what it actually means. But what we need to do is we just need to overwrite the Bricks Builder's default 10 pixel font size for the HTML element and set it to the 100% that Tailwind uses. So to do that, we're going to go into our Winden Settings and then base CSS. And then just at the bottom here, we want to do HTML, and we just want to set this to font size 100% like that. And we'll click Save Changes. And now if I reload the page and we have a look here, we can see that that is now 16 pixels. And if we right click and inspect element and we click on the HTML here, we should be able to see the Winden Settings overriding bricks. So if we have a look here, so bricks. So if I hover on this, we can see that by default bricks here, so this was applied from the the Bricks/assets/CSS. This was coming from the Bricks theme. Bricks was setting our font size to be 62.5%. But then on top of that, our Winden settings took priority there and set it to 100%, which is going to work with Tailwind. Now, if you're wondering why Bricks tried to set the font size at 62.5, so remember, browsers set their default font size to be 16 pixels out of the box, and 62.5% of that is going to be 10 pixels. And it just makes calculating font sizes easier. So if you get a design from a designer, they want your H1s to be 50 pixels, then you would just do 5 rem, which would be 5 times 10 pixels, which would be the 50 pixels. So some people do it, just it makes math a little bit easier. I myself have personally always done this as well. Again, it just makes the math a lot easier. But when you are working with Tailwind and you're using the 16, I've gotten used to it, and there's a little trick. So if we come back and we have a look at the gap that we set before, and I think I set a gap 4, so gap -4, and that's 1 rem. And 1 rem, because we set our font size, remember, on our HTML just then to be 100%, and the default browser size is 16 pixels, 1 rem is now 16 pixels. So if you know that you want to go and add 20 pixels of gap between your columns, you could go, okay, well, gap 4 is 16 pixels. So each time it goes up, it's 4 pixels. So if I want to set 20 pixels as a gap, I would do gap 5. So if we go down to gap 5, that's 20 pixels there. Gap 6 is 24 pixels. Let's just say you set gap 5, which is going to be 20 pixels, and you go, I think I want to make that 30 pixels. You could just say, well, if gap 4 is 1 rem, which is 16 pixels, and I double that, gap 8 is going to be 32 pixels. So you just do gap 8, and that should be 32 pixels, which is there. So you do get used to it. It is a little bit cumbersome at the start, but the more you use it, the more I've found it's just second nature. So this is Grant coming to you from later on in this tutorial, but I wanted to slot this next little bit into this part of the video because it's very important, and it's something that really needs to be said at this point in time. So if we have a look at what we were doing here, if I right click and inspect element and have a look on the HTML element and we scroll down a little bit, we can see that our rule font size 100% is applying. And then if we go to the computer tab, that is making it, if we go down and down and down, to a font size of 16 pixels, which is my default browser font size because I haven't changed any settings in my browser. Now, what's interesting and what I noticed later on in today's video is if I go down to the body and then styles and I scroll down a little bit, I can actually see that the font size is set to 15 pixels here on the body. And I was like, okay, what's applying this? So if I hover on here, it tells me the file, and it's in our WP content themes bricks assets CSS. So Bricks out of the box in their style sheet actually set the body font size to be 15 pixels. Now, I'm not sure why they would go and do that. If you do know, let me know in the comments below. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to overwrite that and set it to a font size of 100%. So here with our HTML element, I'll just go and do a body as well. And then here I'll do font size 100%. And then I'll save this. And now if I come back and reload the page and go to the body, I can see the font size is now 100%. And if we go to the computer tab and go down, it says font size 16 pixels. So yeah, definitely curious to know why you think they do set that as a hard 15 pixels on the body. Let me know in the comments below. And with that said, let's continue with the video. So now that we've got that set up, there's a couple of other different things that I want to go through inside the Bricks Builder settings. Now, the next setting that I've been turning on myself is custom breakpoints, and I'll explain why. This is our default design inside of Bricks Builder, and the way that it works is you design your desktop, and then if we go down to the tablet portrait, we would design that design, and then the mobile landscape, we design that, and then the mobile portrait, we design that as well. Now, if I go back to the tablet portrait, it gives us the rule that's going to take or trigger this layout. So it says the tablet portrait will trigger when the device size is less than or equal to 991 pixels. So the desktop, that will load on page load, but if the person's device is less than or equal to 991 pixels, then this shows. And then down here, if the user's device is less than or equal to 767 pixels, this would show. And then if the user's device is less than or equal to 478, this would show. So Bricks Builder, you design the desktop and you work down through the versions, but your default design is going to be your desktop. Tailwind CSS, on the other hand, works as a mobile first approach, which is the complete opposite opposite of that. So let's go ahead and set it up. And by doing so, you'll get an understanding of what I mean. So back here, let's go and enable custom breakpoints and click Save Settings. And remember, this is experimental. I have the beta version here activated, but I haven't had any issues through my testing from doing these videos. So if I come back here now and I reload the page, look what happens up here. So you can see now we have, if I click on this, we can set our own custom breakpoints. And if I edit the mobile portrait and I click here, I can set this to be my base breakpoint. So if I enable this and click update, so now you can see we're working from the mobile portrait and we're going up the designs. So again, the reverse. And it says a mobile first, which is what Tailwind is. Now, if I reload the page, you can see that when the builder loads, the small devices breakpoint shows first. That's our base breakpoint. And then we design up, which matches the logic behind how Tailwind is set up. Again, it'll make more sense as we start to build this page today. And you can see that if I go from the mobile portrait, which is our base breakpoint, and I go to the mobile landscape, you can see that it says this will trigger when the device is greater than or equal to 76 pixels. So remember before when we were using the default Bricks Builder breakpoints, it was less than or equal to. Now it's greater than or equal to. So it's checking if it's greater and working its way up to our desktop. Now, with that said, you might be wondering, do you have to design the mobile and then work your way up to this one here, which you're probably used to designing first? No, I still design the desktop here. I did a couple of layouts and tests over the last couple of days where I designed the desktop and then I checked the mobile and the spacing was too big. So then I needed to adjust the spacing here and then go back here and make it a little bit bigger. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to build the desktop version, but things like spacing, I'll probably be setting on the mobile version just to make sure that it looks good there. And then I'll set the spacing as we go up and then we'll move to the next section. But it all makes sense as we go through today's video. That's just what I've found works best for me. Now you might be wondering what to set these up as. If we go to Tailwind and we type in, I think it's breakpoints there and click on mobile and then click on responsive design and then scroll to the top. So here it's under core concepts, responsive design. These are the default breakpoints that Tailwind uses. So I think just start with these. Don't do anything complex as you're actually just trying to learn something like this. So let's go ahead and set these up inside of Bricks Builder. So the breakpoint for the small is going to be 640 and up. So at media, min width is 640. So 640 inclusive and greater. So I copy this, go back here, and then we'll go to breakpoints up here. And then let's go to, so this is our mobile. So the next one above that will be the small. So here I'll go edit and let's just rename this to small. And the width will be our 640 pixels and greater. And let's click update. And then we'll get this one here, the medium. And let's rename this one here and call this medium and paste that there and update. And then our large, let's edit this and we'll call this large and paste that there and click update. And then let's click to add a new one. And this is going to be our XL. So XL, and we'll paste that there and click create. And then our 2XL, so we'll go add and we'll go 2XL and we'll paste that there and click create. So now that we've set that up, let's actually go ahead and do something where our CSS classes in Tailwind work with these breakpoints. So let's go ahead and I'm just going to delete these columns here. So I'll delete that and then delete that and delete that. And we'll go back to our 2XL design. And then in here, let's add a div. So we'll add a div and another one and another one. And then in here, let's add an image. So I'll go up to the image and click there. And then let's go ahead and select image. And then let's just select this first one here and go insert. And I'll just duplicate this and I'll just change the image here to say that and go insert. And I'll do that one more time, duplicate, and we'll change this image here and we'll choose that one and go insert. So we have 3 images now. So let's go back to our mobile and then let's click on, and I'll just collapse these so it's a bit easy to read. And let's go to our wrap. And let's say we want this to show always. So for all the different breakpoints, we only want to show this on the larger screens. So let's say on medium devices and greater. So medium or greater. And then maybe this only shows on our extra large layout, XL only. So here always, we don't need to do anything here. Just leave it. It will show through all the different breakpoints. MD or greater, we can go over to here, and remember it's mobile first. So by default, we want to set it to be not showing. So we're going to add the hidden class and press enter. And now that's hidden. And then as we go up to the medium, we actually want to go here. So if you want to target specific breakpoints, all you have to do is do that breakpoint. So MD for medium. And then we need the colons. And then we just write the Tailwind classes. So I can say block and press enter. And now that shows. So if I go here, it doesn't show because remember it's hidden by default. And then when it gets to medium, it displays block. This one here, we only want to show it on the XL, so extra large. So by default, it will be hidden. So back here, so hidden all the way up to our XL, which is going to be here. So then we want to write on XL, we will do block and press enter. And if I go back here and search for block and then click here, this is what we're using. If we scroll up, so if we just add the CSS class block, that gives it a CSS property display block, inline block, and so on. And if we scroll right down, if we add the CSS class hidden, then that just makes it display none. So that's what we're doing there. So we're leveraging these CSS classes that Tailwind gives us, and their system is set up so that if we ever want to do a specific breakpoint, we just write XL colon and then that class name, and that takes effect on that and greater. So hopefully that gives you all the information to get you going with these breakpoints and why I've set up these custom breakpoints to be mobile first. And if we go up, that should cover this tab here. So if we go to builder access, we don't really need to change anything except for here. We want to allow code execution in the code block to run for admins. So we can save that. And then under templates, we don't need to touch that for this video today. The builder coming down here, I like to do this. So the structure panel, so expand the active element and scroll it into view, just so when we click on something in the builder, it scrolls to it and then we're ready to edit it. We've already set them up as divs and explained why. And then the last thing that we will set up a little bit later on is this dynamic data here, but I'll set that up when we get to that point in today's video, just so you can see the before and after and see what this is actually doing. So let's just save that. And then if we go to performance, there's a couple of other things here that we will set up throughout today's video, but I'll get to them when it's appropriate. And that should be it. So to kick off actually going and building this design, let's just go through a couple of things. So what I want to do is just run you through where we're getting this design from, which is frontendmentor.io. So this is a website built for front-end developers. They put out challenges quite regularly, and then you can go in and try and do the challenges. And the ultimate goal is for you to improve your front-end coding skills, CSS, HTML, JavaScript, and I think they do some other things there. You could actually jump in and do this yourself as well after watching today's video. So I have a couple that I've started, but we're going to focus on this one here, which is the news homepage. So I'll click into it. And what's good about this is they give you all the files that you need to build this website. So if I go download starter and download this to my computer, then here in my computer, you get a folder like this, and I've just extracted it. So we have an assets folder, which in the fonts, we can go under here, and it gives us all the font files that we need. So this one here we're going to be using today is Inter, which is a Google font. And then if we go up, we have all our images sliced and exported for us. So we have our favicon, our icons, our images that we're going to use. We have the main image, and then we also have our logo. So in the design folder, we also have JPEGs of the responsive layouts that we're going to be doing. So having a look at this one here, if I open this up, this is the default state. And then they also give you the active or hover states. So if I go up, you can see that we can see what it's going to look like when we hover on the button. It's going to go from this red to the navy. And then this is going to go from a white color to this orange. And then this down here is going to go from navy to a red. And then we also get the mobile version. So if I click over to here, that's what the mobile layout is going to look like. And then we also get a mock-up of the mobile menu. Now, because this is a front-end challenge, you sort of need to treat this as this is a client giving you the design files, and you're trying to use your skills to make this as close as you possibly can. But I'm going to explain something that we're not going to do in today's video and why. So if we go up to here, when you go and do a challenge, you also get a style guide. So if I open up this file, we get the mobile and desktop widths. So 1440 for the desktop, 375 for the mobile. We also get the primary colors and their codes. So the soft orange is going to be this orange over here, and the soft red is going to be the color of the button. Then the off-white is going to be this background color here. It's sort of a yellowy tinge to it. The grayish blue is going to be these numbers down the bottom. And then the dark grayish blue is going to be what we use for the paragraph paragraph text here, and then the paragraphs in here, the excerpts. And then we have our very dark blue, which is the navy color. So that's going to be our headings, our post titles there, and the sidebar background color. And then we also have our body copy, and we get the font size. Now we also get the font, which I just showed you, which is Inter. We get the weights that we need to use in our design. So the regular, the bold, and the bolder. So 4, 7, and 800. So I'll be showing you today how to get those font files and upload them into WordPress inside of Bricks Builder, and then how to connect it to Tailwind so you can add a CSS class to an element and it gets that font applied to it. So I'll show you how to do that. But I want to come back to this body copy point because it's going to be important for how we build our website. So we can see here that they want us to set our base font size to be 15 pixels. And as we know from our previous section, Tailwind actually sets it to 100%, which if the person hasn't changed anything in their browsers is going to be by default 16 pixels. So we've got a couple of different options here. So if a font size of 100% is normally going to be 16 pixels and we want to make that 15 pixels, we could set our font size on our HTML element to be 93.8%. So we'd come back into here and we would go to Winden. And then here for our HTML, we would set it to 93.8%, click save. And then if we go to the front end of our website and just have a look, so I'll go right click inspect and then go to computed. If we go down, we can see the font size is set to 15 pixels. So when we do go ahead and do that, for the remainder of today's video, if we are going through and doing specific things like, let's just say I want to add a padding bottom of 10 to the bottom of an element, then that is actually going to be applying 2.5 rem behind the scene, which equates to 40 pixels. But this is based on the font size being 100%, which would equal 16 pixels, but we've just made it 15 pixels. So basically what I'm saying is if I just leave what we did there, this rule here, which makes it 15 pixels as a base, these numbers throughout this tutorial aren't going to make sense again because they're based on 16 pixels and we've actually set ours to be 15 pixels. And I think weighing up us going out and meeting the brief of making this design look exactly like what's on the screen and what they're wanting us to do in this challenge versus me delivering a tutorial that's easier for you to follow with the sole purpose of today's video allowing you to understand how you would use Tailwind with Bricks Builder, I think the latter outweighs us trying to get the design exactly the same. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to go back here and we're going to set this to 100%, which makes our base font size back to 16 pixels. And now these numbers here are going to make sense for today's video and maybe you'll be able to follow along a little bit easier. So having done that, our design might not look exactly the same again because we're not using the same font size that they wanted us to do, but I think we can get pretty close. And me personally, I feel like 15 pixels is too small these days, especially for these larger monitors. 16, I even feel like sometimes is too small. I think mine on Wage Pirates it's 18 on a desktop. So we'll run with 16 pixels. But yeah, if you do go out and do this challenge from Front End Mentor yourself, maybe have a go at setting it to 15 pixels and see how you go after watching today's video and understanding how it all works. So with that clarified, we're ready to start building this website. So let's start doing it. So the first thing that I would recommend you do is get all the values from the style guide into Winden so that when you're inside a Bricks Builder and you're building your website using the Tailwind classes, you have access to all the values of the style guide. And that way we can set it up once inside a Winden, go into Bricks Builder and stay in that builder and not have to jump backwards and forwards so much throughout this tutorial. So we need to go through and set up our max width for our layout. So the desktop 1440 pixels, the colors for the primary and the neutrals. And then we also need to add our font into there so that we can assign that font to elements inside of Bricks Builder. And the font size we've already dealt with. So they're the main things that we're going to be doing in this section of today's video. So going up, if I have a look here, it says the designs were created to the following widths, 1440 for the desktop. Now, if I open up the desktop in preview, which is here, and I just drag this across and then I go view and we go to actual size, which it already is. So it's 100%. If I get my screenshot tool and I just quickly measure across here for the content area, you can see if I pull this down a little bit, this is 1110 pixels, but it says here it's 1440. And I was wondering when I first opened this up what was happening, and this is what they mean. When it says the designs were created to the following widths, having a look at this, if I actually screenshot the entire canvas, we get 1440. So what they're saying there is this JPEG file is 1440. But again, if I measure the actual content area, the max width of it is 1110. So let's go ahead and set that up. So back here in Winden, Winden Settings, we need to go to Tailwind Config. And this is where we're going to customize Tailwind based on our customizations, our custom values. So moving over to the Tailwind docs, if I search over here for max width and click here, these are the ones that come out of the box. So if I was to go into Bricks Builder right now and add this CSS class to a div, it would be set to this max width. And let's go ahead and start editing a page for now. As we go through, that would probably make the most sense. Let's go add new, and I'll call this home page, and we'll go publish, and then edit with bricks. And then let's go ahead and add a div, because remember, we need to build our page using divs when we're using Tailwind. And then on this div, let's give this a background color of yellow. And this doesn't have any content in it, so there's no height. So let's just quickly add something into that, like a heading, just so we can preview it and actually see this and what it's doing. And let's click save, and then let's preview this on the front end. And this is what it currently looks like. So let's go back into the builder and back here, and let's go back to Tailwind here, and let's apply this class here, max width LG for large. And this should apply a max width of 32 rem to this div, which should equate to 512 pixels. And this is based on the font size being 100%, which is 16 pixels. So here with the div selected, let's go ahead and apply that class. So max width large, press enter. You won't be able to see anything happen here, but if we go up, see how it has a max width now. So I'll save this. And then if we go back to the front end, you can see it has a max width, which if we right click and then inspect element, we can see that if we go to the div, we can see it's applied our max width large class from Tailwind, which is set it to 32 rems, which if I hover, you can see that the inspector is showing that it's 512 pixels wide. So now that we've been through that, if we go back to the docs and go through these predefined CSS classes in Tailwind, we're trying to set ours to match the front end mentor example, which is setting the content area to 1110 pixels. And looking through all of these, it's not going to match. The closest we can get is 1024 with the max width 5XL. But remember, we're trying to make it near exact today in our video. So if you're going out and building a website from scratch and you know you're going to be building it with Bricks Builder and you're going to be using Tailwind, you'd probably not go and register your own custom width, and you would just pick one of these. Like you would just use the max width 5XL. And when you're designing in your design program, you would set your content area to be 1024 pixels. Or maybe you're designing for 6XL, you would actually intentionally make your designs to match these here. But because we're taking someone else's design and trying to plug it into this framework, and this framework doesn't have a class that exactly matches the design, we do need to go and register a custom CSS class and define its width. So let's go ahead and do that now. So the way that we do that is back here in Winden Settings, we need to go to Tailwind Config, and we're going to do it inside of here. If we go back to the Tailwind docs under the max width area, under here, using custom values, if we click customizing your theme, we get an example of how we go and add our own custom max widths. So it's in our theme and then max width, and then you do the key, I guess you would call it, and then the value. So this is going to be directly inside our theme. So let's copy this, and then back in Winden, we'll go to Tailwind Config, and you can see we have that here already. So there's our theme, and that's where we're extending and adding custom colors, which we're going to look at in just a second. But under this extend, we just want to add a new one here. So I'll paste that there, and this is going to be our max width. Now you don't want to put it in extend because that's its own separate thing. You just want to go theme and then max width and then the values. Theme, max width, and then the values. Now the ones that we want to set here are going to match our design. I don't know the best naming convention for this. For me today, I'm just going to call this design desktop, and we would need to make this 1110 pixels max width. Now coming back to how Tailwind is set up, it's using rems, so it scales based on the font size. So we probably want to convert that to rems just so we're integrating into Tailwind as it would expect and how it works out of the box. So here I'm just going to Google, typing in pixels to rem, clicking on this first one, and the pixels is going to be 1110, and that's going to be 69.375 rem, and that's based on a root font size of 16 pixels, which is what we're using. So I'm going to copy this, and coming back here, I will paste that in there. And I think we do need to add rem at the end here. And with that, let's just leave a comment and just say this is the max width of the front end mentor challenge for desktop. And I'll go save changes. So in Tailwind config, let's just copy this. So design DK for desktop. And then back in here, let's go ahead and remove the max width that we set previously. And now we just write max -w hyphen, and then our key for that custom value, which would be design DK. And if I press enter and then save, now if we go to the front end and reload and then right click and inspect element, if I click on this div now, you can see that this has set the max width to be 69.375 rem, which if we go to the computer tab and scroll down to the width is 1110 pixels max width, which matches the design here, which again needed to be 1110. So we've gone ahead and tackled our first customization. And that's a really good intro on what this config does. When you go to the docs here inside of Tailwind, if we go to customizing your theme and we go down here, learn more about customizing your theme, and we click theme customizations, you can find a lot more examples here on the page of how it would work. This is how we're going to do the colors in the future. But Tailwind expects data in a certain way inside the Tailwind config. And as long as you put it in the format that it's expecting, then it can go and generate the class names as it needs to do. I promise it's not overly complex stuff. Again, I'm not an advanced developer or anything like this. It didn't take me very long to figure this out. And once you start jumping in and just trying to use this in designs and stuff like this, it really becomes second nature. And you're not actually adding a lot of customizations to your design. You're mainly customizing your fonts. You might be customizing your max widths, like in this example today, and you're probably going to add your theme colors. Other than that, there's not that many things that you need to do. And once you get your head around those things, then adding any other ones in the future is going to be a breeze. So that's how we would go and set the max width here for the desktop. Now for the mobile, it needs to be 375 pixels wide. And again, this number here, front-end mentor, is just saying that this JPEG they supplied is 375 wide. So if I screenshot this and we just measure it out, you can see that this is in fact 375. Now the content area is going to be a little bit less than that, obviously. So let's measure this one out here. So it is 345. So we're about 30 pixels difference there. So it means there's 15 pixels margin on the left and the right. So to get this mobile layout in Bricks Builder, we can come into here, and if I reload the page, notice what happens to the number up there. It defaults to 477. So if I go up here and we edit the mobile portrait, so I edit here, we can set what its width is going to be. So it's currently 478. So let's change this to 376. And then let's click update, and I'll exit out of this, and then let's save and reload the page. And now the width of this canvas for our default layout is the 375. So now all we need to do, if I just go ahead and get rid of that, let's just say inside this div, we added an image. So we added that in there, and then we click on the image and we select an image and then click insert. And then back here on the container, we just need to add that margin on the left and the right, or the padding on the left and the right, to be 15 pixels. So back in Tailwind docs, let's search for padding and we'll click into this. And then if I search for 15 pixels, it's not going to return any results. But if I search for 16 pixels, you can see that we have this CSS class here, px-4. And if you add that to an element, that applies a padding left of 1 rem, a padding right of 1 rem, and 1 rem is a font size, which is the 16 pixels default. So we did need 15, and this is going to add 16. So it's 1 pixels difference. But this is out of the box Tailwind. We don't need to go and create any custom values or anything like this. It's nice, clean, simple, allows you to get in there and build fast. So this is what we're going to use. So I'll just copy this px-4. So here I'll go px-4 and press enter. And now that's pulled it in. So we can save, preview, and preview on the front end. And there it is there. So that's the desktop, that's the mobile. Let's look at the colors. So coming back into the Winden plugin under Tailwind config, you can see that the Winden plugin gives us an example of how we add a color into Tailwind. And again, this code here is what Tailwind expects. As long as you put your colors in the format that it requires, your colors will be put into the framework as you need to use it to build your design. So currently Winden have registered this color Clifford, and it has this hexadecimal code. So if we go and have a look at what this code should look like, it should be this muted red color. Now, what I found really useful with Tailwind is that you can give your color codes a meaningful name. So in the example here, this hexadecimal code has been given the name Clifford. And what this means is when we're going and building our pages inside of Tailwind, we can reference Clifford and it will know to use this color code. So here's what I mean. So back here in the builder, let's go into this section here, and I'm going to go to style and then background, and I'm going to remove the color that we set inside of Bricks Builder. And I'm going to go to the desktop version just so we can see more of what we're doing. And then on this section here, what we can do is we can write BG-Clifford and press enter. And now that color has been applied. So if we save and preview this on the front end and right click and inspect element, you can see that this BG-Clifford has applied, if we go to the computer tab, this color here, which is at hexadecimal code, just output as RGB. So that's the background color. Now, if we actually went and got rid of that there, and let's just say we wanted to add a border around this image, we could write border solid to make it a solid border. And then here we could add the border 4 class, which gives it a width of 4, which looking back in the Tailwind docs gives it a border width of 4 pixels. So it's going to be a solid border that's 4 pixels in width. And then we can apply the color. So I could do border hyphen and then Clifford and press enter. And now you can see it's added that Clifford color around it as a border. Now, if at any time we want to go ahead and change that color in the future, maybe the client changes their brand colors and stuff like that, we could come into here and all we need to do is update this code here and it will update everywhere on our website that we've applied that Clifford color. So if I typed in blue here and click save, and then we come back and reload the page here, now you can see that is a blue border. And same with the background. If we came back into this here and we applied a background of Clifford and pressed enter, now that background is blue. If we went back here and made that black and pressed save and then reloaded the page in here, everything changes to black wherever we've used Clifford. Back in the Tailwind docs, if we search for color and scroll down under customization and we clicked into customizing colors, you can see that you also have these default values that you can access using the Tailwind framework. So maybe we want to go ahead and apply this lime color at the shade 50. We don't actually need to come in here and register that inside the Tailwind config. It's just part of the Tailwind framework. So we can just come back into here and I'll go to my div. I'll remove that background Clifford and we can write background lime and then 50 and press enter. And now it has that color code there. If we want to make it a little bit darker, I can just remove that and go background lime and we could try 200 and press enter. Now it's a darker shade. So I thought that was just worth pointing out. You can register your own custom color scheme and you also have access to the default ones inside the framework. Now I want to show you one more thing that makes Tailwind very powerful with the colors that you can register. But before we do that, I want to go ahead and actually add the ones from our style guide into our Tailwind config. So coming back into here, I'm just going to copy all of these from here and then back here in Winden Settings in Tailwind config, and I'm just going to paste them at the bottom here just so I have access to them on the one screen. So here under Clifford, we don't obviously need Clifford, so let's go ahead and make our own. So I'm going to rename Clifford to soft orange, and I'll get the HSL values from here, and I'll come up to here and I'll paste them in there. Now I'll copy this from here and I'll paste that down there, and we'll do the soft red. So soft red, and I'll copy from here and I'll paste that in there. And I'll just copy this and I'll paste that again. Now let's do our neutral. So off-white is going to be this. So I'll copy that, paste that in there, off-white, and the grayish blue, I'll copy from there, paste that in there, grayish blue. We have 2 more, so I'll just copy them and paste them down there. And we're going to do dark grayish blue, which is this. So I'll copy that, paste that in there, dark grayish blue, and copy from here and paste that in there. And this is going to be very dark blue. Now you will need to go and type these in different parts of your website. So for example, very dark blue, like I just showed you before, if we get rid of this, let's just say you wanted to apply that as the background for here, you'll have to write BG hyphen and then very dark blue. So obviously the longer these names are, the more you're going to have to type them out and it becomes a bit repetitive and slows you down. So I would recommend trying to keep these as short as possible. So very dark blue, we could change this to navy. Now, another thing to point out here is that for this soft red, you could say, you know what, why don't I just shorten that and name it red? So we would write red there. And now when we type in red, it would use this value here. I would suggest keeping the following in mind when you are naming your colors. Back here in the Tailwind docs, if we search for red, you can see that the framework also, well, it has already reserved red to have these these following values. And it makes developing websites faster in certain circumstances. So for example, let's just say we undo this and we keep this as soft red and we save. Back here in the builder, let's just say that I'm going through and designing this and I just want to make the background for this div a very soft red. I could come up to here and I could do background red and then I could write 50 and press enter. And now it's a very light red. Coming back here, it would be this color here because this is the 50 shade for red. If I want to make it a little bit darker, I could just undo that and go background red 100 and apply that. Now it's a little bit darker. But if I go back here and I actually renamed my own color to be red and saved, and then back in the builder, if I save this and reload the page, you can see that we lose that. So if I go back, you can see that even though on this div we have background red, the shade 100 applied, it's not outputting because by us defining red here, we've lost all the shades from the framework. Now we can only apply red. So if I come back here and remove that and I wrote background red and press enter, we have that value there, which is this value, but we can't access shades of this because we haven't registered them. We would need to go and register all the different shades for this. So that's why I'd recommend naming this soft red, saving it. If we want to apply that, we'll just go background hyphen soft red and enter. There it is there. I'll just duplicate this quickly there. And then maybe down here for this div, we wanted it a very soft red. We still have access to the framework. So I could go background hyphen red and 50 and press enter. Now it's a soft red up here and our actual brand registered color up here. Now the next thing that I want to cover here in terms of colors and Tailwind is in the docs here. If we click on add additional colors, you can see that under colors, we can register the actual color, but then for that color, we can register the shades and the codes for each shade. So for example, if we come back into Tailwind config, we have our navy and it's this color here. But what we could actually do is the following. We could come into here and let's just say we get this code from here and then I go enter and then I paste that in there and I'll just tab it across to clean it up a little bit. This is how you would go and register a color and then multiple shades for that color. So if we wanted to do that for navy, like let's just say that was our brand's main color. So we want to have different shades of that to be able to use in our designs. I could get the word navy and put that down there. And now for navy, I need to go in and set all the codes for the different shades. So let's get the code from the style guide and we'll set that right in the middle at shade 500. And then what we would need to do is set lighter colors up here. So 50 is the lightest shade of this color and then darker colors down here towards 900. Now, if you did want to go down this route of getting a primary color and setting the shades here, you actually don't have to do this manually. There's color generators out there for Tailwind that give you all you need to do to copy and paste into here and have this all ready to go out of the box. In the description below under this video, I'm going to link you to a website, nintu.io. They're actually going ahead and making templates and reusable content blocks for Bricks Builder that use Tailwind classes. So you basically come into here and you can copy and paste this design here into Bricks Builder and it will come across with all the different Tailwind classes. It works really, really well. I was actually speaking to the developer of Nintu and he put me onto this website here, which does all the color generation for you. So this is the URL up the top, tailwind.simeongriggs.dev. And all you need to do is plug in the name here. So we could write navy, and then we need to paste in the hexadecimal code for our color. So we need to convert our HSL to hexadecimal. So in Google, I just typed in convert HSL to hex, clicked on the first link, and then down here, we paste that in and we get our hex code down here. So I'll just copy that, come back into here, and then I'll paste that code. And it says the value of the code that we just pasted equals 500. So shade 500, which is this one here. And then it's generated colors to the left that are lighter and colors to the right that are darker. You can also toggle luminance and lightness just to get different variations there. I'll just keep it on lightness, but if we scroll down, you can see now it's generated the codes for us. So navy, 50 is this, 100 is that, 500 is our actual color from the style guide. So all I need to do now is copy this code from here. Then back in here, I just paste over this. So I would just go paste and then indent that just to neaten it up. And then we'll just get rid of this HSL that we got from the style guide. And then here, let's just add a comment. This is the base color from the front-end mentor style guide. So shade 500 for navy. As far as I can tell from my testing, it doesn't matter if you put these in quotes or not. Both seem to work. So let's go ahead and and save changes. And then back in the builder, I'm just going to save this and then reload the page because we need to reload it to have access to those new variables. And then if we go back to the desktop and then on this div here, let's just say we want to make this our base color, which is the very dark blue color here from our style guide, which is the navy 500 color. Because again, remember from our generator here, it says that our base color becomes the shade 500, which is this one here. So all we need to do to access the navy 500 shade is come into our div and remove the background soft red class that we set up just before. And I go background navy 500 and enter. Now we have our base color. If I go to this second div down here, and I get rid of the background red 50 shade, I can do background navy 50 and press enter. And now it's a very light shade of our blue here. If I want to make it a little bit darker, I could go background navy 100, enter. Now it's a little bit darker. Let's say I get rid of that and I go background navy 50 and press enter. And I find this too dark, like I just want to have a lighter version of it. I could come back into here and switch to luminance, which seems to make it a little bit lighter. And then coming down here, I can just copy the values again. So just copy and then back in here, I'll just paste over that again and then just indent that and then add our comment again and save. Now, if I save this and reload the page, look what happens here. So I'll reload and now that's updated to a lighter shade. So we didn't need to go and add a new CSS class here. Background navy 50, this color here automatically becomes that code there, which is a lighter shade that we just generated. Now, when you're going out and designing your website, you'll generally have your brand color plus some neutrals. So let's just say I'm on wagepirate.com now. So my branding colors currently are this blue color and then this purple color. So throughout my website, I would probably say my purple color is my dominant brand color. So if I was to go out and register colors in Tailwind for my brand to build my website, I would probably go down. I'd get the hex code for this color here. I'd come back here. I'd paste that in. That would be my primary. So I would go down and I would copy this from here and I would probably keep the word primary because coming back to the Tailwind docs, if we search for purple, that's already predefined in here. So I don't want to overwrite that for reasons that I just showed you. So I'd come back into here and for my colors, I would paste that there, just indent that so it's a bit easier to read. So I would have primary being my brand color and then the different shades there. And this is my actual purple from my website. You could change primary to brand. So when you're applying a color, you'd write background brand 500. Or if you kept that as primary, you do background primary 500. On the Nintu website, they use P for primary, so it's a little bit shorter, and then the shades. So when you're going in, all you have to do is do background P for primary color shade 500. So it's just a little bit less to write. So a little bit to cover there. It's really not that complex. Again, you're basically just going to do this here for your primary color, and then you might have your accent color. You could even call it accent here, and then just give it a hex code like that. You don't really need, more often than not, shades for your accent color. And then for your grays and stuff like that, this generator can give you them. So the neutrals, you could get them from here. So go down and copy them from there. But inside the Tailwind config, if we search for slate, you get this gray color scheme here that has a little tinge of blue in it. I quite like that. And you also have access to grays here as well, all out of the box. So you have your primaries with heaps of different shades, your accent color, and the framework also has those grays out of the box there with different shades. So I thought that was worth mentioning in this video today, but to keep it simple, I'm just going to get rid of all of this and we're going to bring it back to basics, and I'll get rid of that as well. And I'm going to write navy and get the HSL value from here and then paste it in there. So we have no shades of the colors from the style guide because we don't really need them. So let's go ahead and save these changes. And that covers everything that you need to know about color setup to do this design today, plus a little bit more. So the next thing that we need to set up are our fonts. So this entire document is going to use the font family Inter, and we're going to be adding the weights 400, which is regular, 700, which is bold, and 800, which is extra bold. So let's go ahead and do that. So back here in our website, I'm going to go to Bricks Builder and then custom fonts and then click add new. And then I'm going to give this font a name. So it'll be Inter. And then for the 400, which is the normal, let's click edit. And now we just need to upload our font files. So you might be wondering, where do you get your font files from? from? If you go to fonts.google.com directly and you go to download your font, so you'd find your font in their directory and you go download font family. When you do that, you'll get a folder that looks like this. And if you click into there, you'll notice that you have all your different font weights there. So light, medium, semi-bold, bold, etc. But they're all the one extension .ttf. And you actually don't want to be using this font format as a web developer because it's uncompressed. And that's why back here in Bricks Builder, when we're trying to upload the files for our font, the top is .woff2 and then .woff and then .ttf. And so we want to be uploading and trying to prioritize the browser loading this file format here, and then that, and then as a last resort, this one here. Now, Bricks does a good job of explaining what they do. So the .woff2 has even better compression than the below one, but it looks like it's not as supported on all browsers. And then under that, this one here is better than this one because it is more compressed. So we really want to make sure we're not just uploading the .ttf that Google gave us. We actually want to upload these two file formats here. So the place that I go to get them is this website here. So gwfh.mranftl.com/fonts, etc. So you just search for your font up here and it searches all the Google fonts. So I've just searched for Inter, and now all I need to do is select the font weights that I want to get. So the regular, the 700 and the 800 as per our style guide. And then if we scroll down the bottom, we can click here to download the files. So I'll go ahead and click here and save it to my computer. And now you have all the different font formats that you need to use as a web developer. So we have the .ttf that we got from Google, but we also have the .woff2, which is the main one we want to use, and the .woff. So let's start uploading these into our website. So back here, let's go ahead and upload this file format here. So I'll go upload. Now I've already just gone ahead and done all this behind the scenes. So this is the regular. So I'll click here and go select. Now I need the .woff. So I'll click and it's this one here and I'll go select, and this one here, the TTF, which is this one here. Now I do want to point out something that I thought was maybe an error with my hosting company, but it's actually not. It's just the way that Bricks handles you uploading fonts. So if I get out of this, let's say here for this font, we want to add a .ttf file format. If I click into here and I get another format like the .woff, if I drag it into here, it says that it failed and I'm not allowed to upload this file type. Now, it's a little bit of a confusing error message by saying that you can't upload this file type. You actually can, you just can't upload it for here. Because remember, we said that we're trying to upload a .ttf file type. If I click here, we can only upload that extension. If I try and upload .woff or any other extension, it's going to fail. And that's why in here, it's only showing me my .ttf files. So if I went ahead and deleted this one here, so I'll delete and delete permanently and dismiss errors. And remember, we're trying to upload a .ttf here. If I upload the TTF and the .woff, if I drag these in, the .ttf uploads correctly, but the other one fails. So just an important thing to point out there. Don't go spend time contacting your hosting company and trying to diagnose your website. It's really that simple. So with that selected, I'll click select, and now we've uploaded all the different file formats for the 400. Now let's go add font variant, and this is going to be 700, the bold. So I'll click here. And again, I've added these behind the scenes, so I'll just go ahead and go through and select them all. So the bold 700 and select, and then here 700 and select, and then here 700 and select. And then we'll go add font variant, and the last one's going to be the 800 extra bold. We'll go upload and we'll go 800 select, then here 800 select, and then here 800 and select. So let's do a double check. 800 800 800 777 regular, and I actually made an error back here, so it's always good to check. So let's remove that and go upload. So it's because we have two 700s and an 800 and no regular. So let's find the regular. So it's here, drag that in, and we'll go select, and now that's looking all good. So let's go ahead and publish this, and notice what happens here. Now we can actually preview what that font looks like to make sure we haven't made any errors. So this is what it needs to look like, so it's all good to go. So now we just need to go and apply this font to our website, because if we currently go to the front end, the font files are there inside our website, but Bricks doesn't know how to use them. It's not trying to load those font files on our website. And we can tell by if we we go right click and go inspect and go to computed and scroll down, you can see the current font family is just the Apple system default. So let's go ahead and get our font working. So back here, I'm going to keep this open and let's just open up Winden Settings. And then under the base CSS tab, we need to load those font files into this style sheet so we can actually use those font files. And this is going to be using the @FontFace rule. Now, I needed a refresher on this. I haven't done this in a very long time. I guess that's one of the downsides to using page builders. Everything's all automated for you and you just forget these things that you learn once upon a time. But this paragraph, in case you don't know, the @FontFace rule allows custom fonts to be loaded on a web page. Once added to a style sheet, the rule instructs the browser to download the font from where it is hosted. So basically we add this to our style sheet that downloads the font and then it can be used in our style sheet rules, our CSS file. So let's go ahead and get the @FontFace rules. So the easiest way that I've found is we are here inside Bricks Builder under custom fonts, editing this font inter, and we can see what these fonts look like. So we know that that font is loading on this page. So if we right click and go view page source and search for @FontFace, we can see here @FontFace inter 400. So this is our regular, and then it has the URL to all those font files that we just uploaded, the .woff2, the .woff, and the .ttf. And there's 3 rules, one for the 400, one for the 700, and one for the 800. So all we need to do is just copy this from here. So all of that. And then back here in Winden, we'll just go here and paste that there. And we want to paste that before any of our CSS because we want to load the font files and then be able to use those font files in our CSS. So now if I save these changes and we go to the front end and reload the page, nothing happens because our style sheet is now downloading those font files. We're not actually applying the font anywhere. So the last piece of the puzzle here is on our HTML element. We just need to do font-family and then the name of the font. And we can just copy from up here and we can just paste that there. So now if we go up and go save changes, and I'll just zoom in so we can see what's happening. So a little bit more. So if I reload the page, we should see a change and there's no change. So let's zoom out and see what's happening. So if I go here and go to the HTML element and go to computed and go down, we can see that the font family is inter. And do you know what? I remember when I was doing this before, if I go to the body and we go to the computer tab, so these are the styles that are actually taking effect, the font family swaps to Apple system. So we actually need to set our font to the body and not the HTML because it's getting overwritten. So coming back here, let's just go body and break that out and we'll just get the font from the HTML element and we'll apply it to the body. So now if we save changes here, so now looking at this, I can see that this is in fact our font. So if I right click and go inspect element and we go to the HTML and then computed, so you can see if we scroll down, there's no font family applied to this. And then if we go to our body, we can see that it's computed to do inter, which is what we want. So now that we've got our fonts loading on the page, how would we go and apply 400, 700, and 800 as the font weight? Back here in the builder, let's go ahead and add a heading module like so. And I'm just going to have this heading from our design on the right hand side. And we're going to go ahead and try to recreate it. So the background on this containing div, we don't want anything on there. So we'll get rid of the background color and the text color. And let's set this to a background and our off-white. So I'll go enter. Now that has that slight yellow tinge and I'll exit out of that. Now on the heading, let's go ahead and make its font color the navy. So we'll go text -navy and enter. And now that's the navy color. So now let's make it a little bit larger. We could go text and we could try 4XL and enter, maybe a little bit larger. So text 6XL, enter, and I'll change the content here. And it also looks a little bit bolder. So let's go ahead and set this to font bold and enter. That didn't seem to do anything. So let's just save this and preview on the front end and have a look at what's going on here and go to the computer tab and go down. So I can see the font weight is already set to 700, which if we go to the Tailwind docs and search for font weight and go into here, I can see that when we added the font bold class, it sets it to 700. So that's why nothing changed when we did that. If we apply this CSS class font-extra bold, it should make it 800 and we should see a difference. So back in the builder, let's click into our heading and let's add that CSS class font-extra bold. And when I press enter, we should see a change because it's going to change from 700 to 800 font weight. Enter, got a bit bolder, save this. this and then reload on the front end, and we should see that get bold like so. So now let's go ahead and add some basic text here, and the same applies here. So by default, this text would be a font weight of 400. If we want to make it 700, we would do font-bold and enter. Now it's the 700. Get rid of that. If we do font-extra bold and apply this, now it's 800. So that's how you would go and do that. So that covers all the things that we need to understand in relation to fonts to do this design today, and we've reached the end of the style guide. So with everything set up, we're ready to jump in and start designing this page, so let's get going. So let's go ahead and delete the canvas, so we're starting from scratch, and then I'm going to pull up my design here and make sure we go to view and actual size, so we're designing to scale, and we're ready to begin. Now, if at any time it looks like I'm swapping backwards and forwards between this design and the window here, I'm just pressing Command Tab on my keyboard to swap backwards and forwards between applications. So it's the one that I'm currently in, the one I was last in, the one I was currently in, and so on. And then when I'm inside this one application, which is Chrome, I'll just Command and then the tilde key, I think it's called, and that just toggles between the open tabs within that one application. So this is just within Brave, my browser, and then doing this is jumping between the preview app and the actual browser. So coming back here, we are going to start with the design of the desktop, because I think you want to start with the complex layout, which is going to be the desktop. We need to set up the grid the correct way, because when we get to the mobile, so I'll actually just tab and show that as well. The mobile's just one column. So there's no point going and designing the mobile first here for the grid, because everything could just be one column. It just really doesn't make sense. So as far as I'm concerned, I feel like it makes a lot of sense to design your desktop first still, even if your CSS code is working from a mobile first breakpoint. So coming back into here, let's go to our desktop view. So let's start the design, and I'm going to add a div into here, and this is going to be for the header. Now you might be wondering, why am I designing the header in here when we're designing this homepage design? What I've started to do is so that I can build the website here in the one screen and make sure all the margins line up and stuff like that. I've started designing my header in here, my content area, and then my footer. And once everything looks good, it's neat and tidy, I'll just get the section for the header and I'll right click and go copy. And then back here in Brick Settings, I'll go here to bricks and templates, and then I'll add my template. This will be my header and the type will be header, and then I'll go publish and edit with bricks. And then I paste the header into there. And then up here, I would set the conditions for it. So template settings, conditions, and I would apply this to my entire website. And then I'd come back into here and delete it from here. But yeah, like I just said, right now I'm just finding it easier inside Bricks to design everything on the one page and then split them out to the necessary templates. So coming into here, we have our container for the header, and let's go ahead and add a div into that. And coming back here, we're going to have one on the left and then one on the right. So two columns there. So I'll go up and I'll add another div. And because we're building this inside a Tailwind, a really good thing to do is to pin the div element. Actually, it was already pinned, so you want to come into it and pin it so it's always up the top. So no matter what you're doing, if you go up here to add an element, you just click here to add a div. So if I just drag this up, we now have our two columns, and then inside this, we're going to have the logo. So I'll add an image in there, and I'll just rename this to logo. And then in here, we're going to have the menu. So I'll search for nav menu and add that in there. So I'm going to go ahead and add the content here, and then we'll start playing around with the grid layout. So for the logo, I'll select an image, and from Front End Mentor under the Assets tab and Images, I'm just going to upload all the images that aren't currently in here, which is everything except that, and that. So I'll drag them in. And now we've got an error, and it's related to one of the brick settings that I said that we would set up later in today's video. So if we have a look on the right-hand side here, it says logo.svg, icon menu SVG, and icon menu close SVG. So this SVG file type is being rejected by WordPress. So what we need to do is come back to our dashboard here, and under bricks and then settings, in the general tab, you can see SVG uploads. We want to enable them for the admin user, which is us. So I'll go down and save settings. And now if I go ahead and drag the SVG files in like this, we still get the error. So we actually need to go save and then refresh the page. And then I'll click back into here, select the image, drag the SVGs in. Now they're uploading, and now our logo is in there. So I'm going to select the logo and insert, and we'll go back to the desktop. And then the nav menu, we also need to go ahead and create that. So let's quickly do that. So back here in our dashboard, I will go to appearance and then menus, and I'll just call this main menu, and we'll create the menu. And we need our home, new, popular, trending, and categories. So I'm just going to add add fake links here for today's video. So I'll just copy that. So this will be home, or we can actually add a link to the home there. New, popular, trending, and categories. So add that. So now I'll save the menu. Then back here in Bricks Builder, let's save and reload the page. And then I'll just go back to the desktop. And then for the nav menu over here, we will select the main menu that we just created. And there it is there. Now, before we go any further here, I just realized that we haven't done a very important step in our design, which is to set the background color of our entire website. So looking at the design, this color here is the off-white color, and it takes up our entire website. So it's not just on a section or anything like that. It's our entire website. So as you recall, when we set up Winden Settings inside the Tailwind config, when we registered the color palette from the style guide, one of those colors was that off-white color, and it has this value here. So how do we go and use this here, this variable that we've registered in the Tailwind config, and apply that to our body element and apply it as a background color? It's very simple. To do that, we come back to the base CSS inside of Winden Settings, and we do it here inside the @layer components. If we go back to the Tailwind CSS docs and search for @layer components, and maybe this one here, you can sort of get an idea of what it does from looking at this. So this here, Tailwind base, Tailwind components, and Tailwind utilities. Tailwind based, Tailwind components, Tailwind utilities. So this is the exact same order that we have in our document. We don't currently have this, our base, but we do have this @layer component. The way Tailwind works, and I'm still really trying to wrap my head around what this means on a deeper level and how it works, but the basic gist is that Tailwind needs things to go in this particular order, because what this is doing, Tailwind base, is it's resetting your browser to default values, and then it's adding on components and it's adding on its utility classes. So the utility classes being anything that we're pretty much applying in Tailwind, like text XL, P4 for padding 4, and so on. All those classes that we've been looking at in today's video would be utility CSS classes and fall under utility. So once all these things are able to run that Tailwind is built upon, then we can start adding our own customizations. And the one that we're about to use is this @layer components. So the way that this works is you can set up a CSS class in here, and then you can write @apply, and then you can write the utility classes of Tailwind, and then anything that gets this CSS class applied automatically will get the CSS properties of these Tailwind CSS classes. Now, if that doesn't make sense, don't worry. The next example is going to make this clear. Took me a little bit to get my head around it, but it actually makes a lot of sense, and it's very, very useful, especially for how we're going to use it right now. So back here in the Winden base CSS, we let Tailwind reset the browser and do its things, register its utility classes. And now that we have access to it after that, we can start adding our custom CSS. So here for the body, you just write it like normal CSS, but I write @apply, and then we choose the utility classes that we want to apply to the body element. So in this case, it's going to be a background off-white. And then I just end it like normal CSS. We can save this. And now if I save and reload the page, you can see that now we have that off-white color going all across our page. If I just preview this on the front end and we right click and inspect element, I'll show you how it's actually worked. So if we click on the body element and go down, you can see it's occurring here. So background color HSL 36199, which back here, if we go to Tailwind config, is 36199. So that's how components work. You do your selector and then @apply, and then you write your utility classes for Tailwind in there, and that gets applied to whatever this is. Coming back to their example here, they're using a button blue. So if I just copied this here and I pasted that in there, and I just tab that to make it a little bit neater, anything that we add this CSS class to, btn-blue, it's going to have these Tailwind CSS utility classes applied. The background's going to be blue shade 500. On hover, it's going to go a little bit darker to blue 700. The text is white. The font is bold. PY-2 means the padding on the y-axis, so padding top and bottom is 2, and the padding X and the PX-4, so padding on the x-axis left and right 4, and it's going to have rounded corners. So let's save that, and I'll just show you. I'll copy this, so this class. We'll come back into the builder, and then let's go ahead and just add a new div. So I'll add a div into here, and then in in here, we'll add some text, so basic text. And then on this div, let's go ahead and apply that class. So btn-blue, press enter. And I'll just give this a margin on the left and right of 24, just so you can sort of see what's going on here. But if we preview this on the front end, you can see when I hover on it, it goes a darker shade. So from 500 to 700, the text is white, the font is bold. That's a cool little feature of Tailwind and how you would go and do something like that. So I'm going to go ahead and just remove that example there. We'll stick with just on the body applying our variable here for the background off-white. Click save and reload the builder, and let's continue. So let's go ahead and start laying out this header. So if we go up to the header here, we know that inside this header, we want these two columns to sit next to each other. But I also know that we want to bring those two columns inside the page, so they're inside a container that has a max width and is centered in the center of the page. So let's go ahead and wrap a div around these two columns. So I'll go right click here and let's go down to wrap div. And I'll just collapse this and I'll just call this say col1, and this would be col2 with our menu. I'll drag it into here and I might rename this to wrap. So we have our main section that goes the full width of the page. We'll have our wrap that has a max width on it and is centered in the middle of the page. And then inside there, we'll have the two columns that sit next to each other. So with this done, how do we go and sit these two columns next to each other? I'm going to use Flexbox for this. So let's go up, and on the wrap, we need to make this a flex box because right now it's a div and that has display block. So coming back to the Tailwind CSS, if you come up to here and you search for flex and we go into here and go down a little bit, you can see that we just need to add flex to the container, and then on the children, we can apply the classes to lay it out. So the main ones that we're going to apply right now is flex to give it the flex box layout. And then under flex direction, if we go down, we can make it a flex row where the columns sit next to each other on the row, or we can also go down and make it a flex col, which makes them sit in a column. So if we go back here on the wrap, we will make this a flex box. So I'll write flex here and apply that class. And now you can see they're sat next to each other. Now the reason they're sitting next to each other is by default, Flexbox sets itself to flex row like this, where they sit next to each other. But we do need to keep in mind we are using Tailwind, which is mobile first. So if we go to the mobile version, we want them to sit in the column, and then as it gets larger, convert to the row. So we actually want to set its default state to a column. So to do that, I'll come into here and I'll write flex-col and press enter. So now they're sitting underneath each other. And then as we go up to, say, we could do it on the medium breakpoint. I'll just get out of this. With Tailwind, when you want to target a specific breakpoint and up, you just write the breakpoint, so MD for medium, and then the colon, and then the Tailwind utility class. So here we're going to write flex-row and press enter, and now they convert to a row. So here is going to be the flex col, where they sit on top of each other, and then as we go up and up, when it hits medium, we convert it to a flex row with this class here, and it stays like that up until we either override it again or leave it as it is. And obviously we just want to leave it as it is. So next we want to give this a max width. So remember, coming back here, we set this custom max width variable here. So design DK, and that's going to set something to its max width of 69.375 rems wide, which using a font size of 100%, i.e. 16 pixels, it equals 110 pixels wide, which if we measure our design again, it equaled this content area's width there. So to add that, all we need to do is just copy this from here, and we could even just simplify this and write design and click save. So back here in the builder, I just need to reload it. And then on our desktop view, I'll just go to the wrap so we can see what we're doing. And this is the one that we want to bring in. So I'm going to add a CSS class of max-w- and then our variable name. So design and press enter. And now that has brought it in. And if you're wondering how I knew to write max-w- and then my variable that I had registered here, this is just all part of Tailwind. Tailwind just has a specific format that it uses. You do that. It's just the power of a framework. A framework is like it sounds. It's something that has a structure. You plug into the framework to get a benefit. And in our case, it's to, do things faster, make things more consistent, and have better, more logical ways to go and build a website. So now that we've given that a max width here, we just need to center it on the page. So to do that, we write MX for the margin on the left and right, the X-axis, and then auto and press enter. And now it's centered on the page. Now, for this next thing that I want to show you, I'm going to come onto the wrap and I'm going to add a background color. So maybe background blue 200 and enter. We are going to remove that in just a second, but we need to highlight this box so I can show you this next thing. So if I save this and then preview it on the front end, if we inspect element here, we can see that if we hover on this, you can see it if we click on this and go to computed and go down, we can see that its max width is 1110 pixels, which matches our design that we're recreating today. But as we pull this in, notice how we have no spacing on the left and the right. So to do that, let's come back into here and edit. And then on the header, let's go ahead and add some padding on the left and the right. So remember, looking at our mobile design, this was 15 pixels over here and Tailwind is mobile first. So the default that we need to set for this header section is going to be 15 pixels. And then if we want to increase it for larger designs and give it more room to breathe on tablets and so on, then we can go and do that as we go through this next section. So let's go to our mobile design and then let's go ahead and add some padding on just the left and the right. So back here in the docs, we can search for this. So let's go padding and then here it is. And we want PX. So here, and then we want to go down until we find, let's just say 16 pixels. So we can see PX-4 means 1 rem or 16 pixels. So I know our design had 15 pixels margin on the left and the right. We're going to add 16. It's close enough and we don't have to customize anything inside of Tailwind. So let's go ahead and apply that PX-4. So coming back into here on our header, I will apply that there. So enter, and you can see that's brought it in. So now if I save that and we go to the front end, our width is still the 1110 pixels wide. Now we have some spacing on the left and the right. Now let's say you wanted to have your spacing there where it is the PX4 on mobiles, but as you get more room to move on these larger devices, you want to slightly increase it. So maybe on the medium, you want to add PX6 and then on large, your PX8. So the way that you would do that is as follows. So let's go ahead and then on the wrap, we will target the medium breakpoint. So MD and then colon, and then we write our utility class. So on the medium breakpoint and up, we want to do PX-6 and press enter. Sorry, we actually want to do that on the header. So up here, we'll do medium column PX-6 and press enter. And now that pulls it in just a little bit more. And PX-6 makes it 24 pixels. So we went from 16 up to 24. And then if we do PX-8, that's going to go to 32. And then let's say for the large devices, we want to add PX8. So here we'll do LG for that breakpoint and up, and we'll do PX-8 and press enter. And now that's even more. So let's save that and we'll go to the front end and let's see how this works. So back here, mobile first, this is PX4. And notice as I pull it out, the padding is going to increase and get larger for the larger devices. So if we keep going, it should go to PX6 soon, which should happen around there. So you can see, bam, it goes to PX6. And then if we keep going larger and larger, it just gets larger there, right there. So from there, PX6 to PX8 there. And then as that goes out, it'll be like that. So with that setup, that leads me into discussing one of the downsides that people that say you shouldn't be using Tailwind inside of a page builder bring up, which is the fact that you don't have access to the code. So if you go and build your website, and if we open this and we set all of our sections to have these classes, so PX4 as a default, and then at the medium breakpoint, a padding 6, and then at the large breakpoint, a padding 8. Let's say we build our entire website using that. So I'll just go ahead and duplicate this here. Now let's just say we duplicate that again and again, and we had 4 sections on our website. But remember, we have heaps of different pages upon our website. So we're going to have a lot of different sections or divs on our page that have these classes applied. Now let's just say we're looking at our mobile and we're like, oh, I actually really want to increase the padding on the left and the right here to let it breathe a little bit more. So how would we go and do that with the current setup? Well, we would actually need to go into here, and where it says PX4, we would need to remove that and then write PX-6 and enter. And now that's increased a little bit. But then when we go up to the medium, maybe we want to increase that as well. So we would need to remove this one here, and then we need to do medium, and this would be PX8. And then when we went to the large, we need to do that again. So we need to remove that there. And then for the large, we do px10 and enter. And now that's a little bit larger. But we've just done that for the one here. We actually need to go through, and for all of them, we would need to do that same thing. And this is one of the downsides that people that say you shouldn't use Tailwind in a page builder bring up. And I think it's a very valid point. Tailwind was built to be used in a code editor. Because in a code editor, let's just say we had this code here, which is a div, and then we have our wrap. And on the div here, we have a px4 and then a px6 and a px8. So similar to what I've created here inside of Bricks Builder. Now in a code editor, if I needed to go ahead and change all of the padding here for all the different sections on this page from a px4 to a px6, I could just put my cursor there, and then I could use a feature inside here called multi-cursor editing, where I hold my option key and I click here and I click there. Now I have my cursors there and I can just go across and do that. And now it's updated for all these three sections. And I can just go across here and change this to an 8 and then change this to a 10. And now I've updated all the responsive breakpoints padding for all the different sections on my page very quickly. Now coming back into the builder after looking at the features in a code editor that make Tailwind so easy to update and use, you might be thinking, okay, well, I can't use it in a page builder because it's definitely not practical to go and add these utility classes to every element on the page I need to add them to. And if I need to update them, I need to delete them from everywhere and add them manually. You don't actually need to do that. We can leverage a built-in function inside of Tailwind to be able to edit something in one place and update it throughout our entire website. So I'll show you how that works. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to delete these here. So I'll delete, and delete. And then on this header, I'm going to remove the padding classes. So I'll remove that, and that. And then if we expand this on the wrap as well, that pulls it in, I'm going to remove the max width, our MX auto that centers it on the page. And I'm going to remove the background color. And I'm going to click save. And now let's go back to Winden, and then under the base CSS tab in this layer components, we can come down and add a new selector. So we could call it .section. And then in here, we're going to @apply, and we're going to apply some Tailwind utility classes. So I'll do px4 for mobiles and up, and then we'll do at the medium breakpoint and up, we'll do a px of 6, and then at the large breakpoint, we'll do a px of 10. And then I'll just end that, and let's save that. And then back in the builder, let's reload the page. And now if we go to our header, and then up here, we add that class, so section, and press enter, now it has that padding added. And if I save this and then preview it on the front end, just to show you what's happening, if we look at the source code and go up to the div that has the section class applied, so you can see that a padding left and right is being applied of 2.5 rem. And that's based on this rule here. So for our large breakpoint and up, we're applying this. And in the Tailwind docs, px10 equates to 2.5 rem, which is what we're seeing. So now let's go ahead and add a new one. So I'll just call this wrap. And then in here, we want to apply the following classes. So we're going to give it a max width of our design. We're going to center it on the page with MX Auto. And I'm going to go ahead and just apply that background blue color just so we can see what's happening. So background blue 200. And I'll end that. And then let's save. Now coming back into the builder, I'll just reload the page again. So we have access to that class. And then on the wrap here, I'll go to the desktop just so we can see what's happening. On the wrap, let's apply that class. So I'll add wrap and then press enter. And now that's centered on the page with a max width with our blue background. So let's save this and then preview again. And there it is. So if I go down to the wrap and go down, you can see that it's applied a margin left and right of auto. Its max width is 69.375 rem, which is what we set our custom design max width to be. And it has our blue background color. So now if we go ahead and have multiple sections on the page, so I'll quickly just go and recreate one behind the scenes. So I've just gone ahead and done that. So we have our section here called content. Then we have our wrap inside that. And then inside that, we have 2 columns, and in each column is just an image. So let's go ahead and on the section here, let's add our class. So we'll add our section class and press enter. And that gives it the padding on the left and the right. And now on our wrap, we'll go ahead and add our wrap CSS class and enter. That that gives it the max width and centers it on the page. So if we save this and then preview this on the front end, and now everything's lining up and looking good. But now let's just say a couple of months down the track, we're looking at our website on our mobile phone and we feel that there's just not enough padding on the left and the right, and we want to increase it. All we have to do that is come back in here in Winden, and then here under our section, we could just change this to, for example, a 6. We could change this to an 8, and then this to a 12. And then if we save that, back here on the front end, if I reload and bring it in, now we have that update there, and it's updated for every section on our page. So as you can see, this apply feature is very powerful. Now, I think what we just covered really lends itself well to following on to the next topic, which is going to be all about plugins that will allow us to use Tailwind inside of Bricks Builder a whole lot easier. We need to remember that Tailwind is probably the most popular CSS framework. I'm not sure if Bootstrap is larger than it, but Tailwind is massive. Then we have a lot of people moving over to Bricks Builder and developing these websites. So we have a big audience and a growing audience inside Bricks Builder. There's going to be third-party developers out there that are really trying to capitalize that and bridge the gap there so that we can use Tailwind inside of Bricks Builder a whole lot easier. Now, one of the obvious third-party plugin developers that is really focusing on this is going to be the Winden plugin developer, which is a plugin that we've been using throughout today's video. So I'm going to leave a link in the description below for you to go and check out Winden, but then also go and check out this plugin here called Plain Classes Oxygen. So the Winden plugin developer has actually already released functionality for Oxygen Builder that allows you to use Tailwind inside of Oxygen Builder a whole lot easier. And he's working on the Bricks version of this plugin. And I want to go through some of these features that will be released in the upcoming Bricks plugin. So if we go down here, one of these features is called Plain Classes. And as you can see on the screen here, if I zoom in, instead of having to write your CSS classes one by one like we've been doing throughout today's video, you get one field here that you can just write into like a text editor. So for example, if I'm back here in my code editor and I wanted to go and add some padding on here, I'd go px4, medium would be px8, and maybe large is padding left and right of 16. So I can write those three classes very easily without having to use my mouse. It just makes it a whole lot simpler. Obviously, Tailwind being a CSS framework that uses utility classes, we're constantly writing a lot of classes on elements. So we need to be able to go and do what I just did there very simply. And we can all agree that to do that inside of Bricks Builder currently, right, px-4, enter, and then click here, and then apply the next one, medium, px10, and then enter, and then click out of it, and then go here, large, padding left and right, 16, and enter. It's not a very easy way to go and do that. And then to update them, we have to go one by one. We'd have to remove them one by one and then reapply them. So what Plain Classes aims to do is to go inside a Bricks Builder and apply multiple classes like we are in a code editor. So we can write all the different classes we want to apply in this one box. It's going to make a massive difference. So very excited for this plugin to release for this feature. Now, also included in the existing plugin for Oxygen Builder that will be coming across to Bricks Builder is the ability to autocomplete. So when you're in here and you're typing a Tailwind class, so for example, in the image here, if we write 3 letters A and I for animate, we could just use our keyboard down arrow to quickly go to the class that we want, press enter, and that would be applied. So these two things here together are going to allow us to apply Tailwind classes very fast. So it's going to be a massive improvement once this plugin is released. I'm not quite sure how far off it is. I think it's actually coded and in testing right now. But yeah, just in the description below, click the link, go to the website. Maybe there's a mailing list or something, and join the Facebook group. That's where you will be updated when he does release this plugin. But with these two features here, we're still missing a very important feature that a code editor gives us that inside a page builder we cannot do. And that's the following. If we have these 3 divs here and they have the exact same CSS classes on them, with the multi-cursor editing inside of a code editor, like I showed you before, we can just put our cursor wherever we want, like that. So now we have 3 cursors, and we can bulk update multiple elements as classes at the same time. So here I could set them all to 10 as a default. The medium could go up to 16, and the large could go up to 24. So edit in one place, update 3 elements at the exact same time. time. But what I'm thinking is, imagine if a third-party developer could go out and add a feature that helps us have that multi-cursor experience inside of a page builder. So at the core of that, we're using the multi-cursor inside of a code editor to be able to put our cursor in multiple places and then be able to update multiple bits of our code without having to click into each one. So what if there was a way here inside of Bricks Builder where I could hold my command key and we could just select multiple elements here in the tree. And let's just say I had both of these selected. Maybe I could come over to the plain text box here. So this, and anything that I write into there, like PX4, medium, PX10, and large PX12, maybe when I do that in the plain text and I press enter, that would add these classes to all the elements that were selected. The functionality isn't exactly the same as a multi-cursor experience, but the overall benefit of doing that is exactly the same. We're selecting multiple elements, writing in one place, and updating all of those elements at the same time. Massive time saver. I think if there was a way to do that, a lot of people that are on the fence about using Tailwind in a page builder would probably give it a go. I know that after using Tailwind myself over the last couple of weeks, this would be a massive time saver. So fingers crossed. The Winden developer, he's quite open to getting feedback from his Facebook group and the community, and he also uses Tailwind. So I'm sure we're going to have some really good integrations sometime in the future that allows us to easily use Tailwind in Bricks at a deeper level. Now, to see this in action in Oxygen Builder and then be able to envision how it might work inside a Bricks Builder once it's released in the near future, on this page here that I'll link to, if you go up, there's also a video, and in that video you can sort of see how it works there. I definitely recommend checking that out as well. And hopefully it gets released at $10 as well. That'd be pretty good. But I think this is an important section to put in this video here, because I know in my previous video where I was showing you how to use interactions inside a Bricks Builder, and then I was using Tailwind to build my website and just playing around with it pretty much at that stage, people commented on that video and said that you don't want to be using utility classes in a page builder. It's impractical. I think it's definitely reassuring that Tailwind is so big and Bricks that something good is going to happen in the near future. And we can already see it starting to take shape with plugins like this. So let's continue with building our design. So I'm going to go ahead and just delete this for now. And we're going to come back to the header. So back on the header, we have our section class applying there. So let's go back into Winden, and here in our .wrap class, let's remove that blue background and then save changes, and then come back in here and save and reload the page. And we'll go back to the desktop and let's continue. So coming back to our design, we need our logo on the left-hand side and then our menu on the right. So up here on our wrap, we have this set to flex, and it's a flex on the default layout, the mobile. And then as it hits the medium breakpoint, we go to flex row. So they sit next to each other, and that carries through all the way up. So now let's get this navigation sitting over to the right-hand side. Now coming back into the Tailwind docs, there's actually a whole section here called Flexbox and Grid. And this is probably where you're going to have to spend the most amount of time learning things to lay out your content. But once you get your head around some common classes inside here, it's very fast to go and create complex layouts. So inside here, if I go down here and I click on Justify Content and have a look, we have these classes: Justify Start, Justify End, Justify Center, Between, Around, and Evenly. And they give you some examples of what that looks like. So if I scroll down a little bit, I can see that this one here, Justify Between, puts the first one on the left-hand side, the last one on the right, and then spaces the one in the middle evenly. So this is what we want to use. So I'm going to copy Justify -between, and then back here on my wrap, under here is those flex items, and this one here has that flex class. I'm going to go ahead and add that here. So Justify Between and press enter. And now we have our first child all the way on the left and our last child all the way on the right. Now looking at our design, our navigation here is actually vertically centered in our logo. So let's go ahead and do that. So if we go down, there's another one called Align Items, which is here. So I'll click on there. And if we go down, we get some examples. And if we go down, we'll find this one here, Items Center. And that centers them vertically. So I'll copy this. And then back here on our wrap, I will go ahead and just add that in there and enter. And now that's pulled the menu there. I'll just undo that in case you missed that. So I'll reapply it and look what happens to the menu. Enter. Now it's vertically centered to the logo. Now I'll just bring up the mobile on the right hand side and let's start to look at padding up the top and the bottom. So if I have a look here and screenshot this, and again, let's just make sure this is actual size. size, which it is. So if I measure up the top here, we have 90 pixels padding up the top, and then under that, we have 55. So 90 and 55. So I'm just going to write that down just so I don't forget here. So 90 top and 55 bottom, and that's the desktop. And on the mobile, if we have a look, there's about 28 on the top, and under it, there is about 32. So 28 top, 32 bottom for the mobile. So as we know, Tailwind is a mobile-first CSS framework. So let's go apply the mobile, and then we'll apply the desktop at the medium breakpoint. So coming back into Tailwind docs, if we search for padding and then go back into here, we're trying to add 28 top, 32 bottom. So I can see if we add the class PT7 for padding top 7, that adds 28 pixels on the top. So let's go ahead and apply that. So I'll go to the mobile view, and then for this header, let's go ahead and add that there. So PT7, enter, that pushes it down, and 32 on the bottom. So I can see if we add this class here, padding bottom 8, that adds 2 rem to the bottom, which equates to 32 pixels. So coming back here, let's just go ahead and apply that there, padding bottom 8, enter, and now that's done. Now, as we go up to the medium breakpoint, we want to increase that padding. So we need to make the top 90 and the bottom 55. So back here, let's look for something close to 90. So we have 80 and then 96. So let's just choose this one here for 96. So this would be PT24. And we want to apply this for the medium breakpoint and above. So we'll come into here and I'll write MD for medium, colon, and then PT24, enter. And now that's increased. And now we need to add the 55 on the bottom. So this is close enough, 56. And this is 14. So PB14, I'll go into here and then add that and enter. And now that is all done. So I'll just save this and preview this on the front end. So if I bring this in, this would be the mobile version. And as we hit the medium, the padding should get larger like that. I just noticed that on the mobile, looking at the reference, we want these to sit on the same row. So coming back into here, we actually don't want to ever do a flex col. We always want to make it a row. So we can just get rid of flex col and then get rid of applying the flex row at just the medium breakpoint, and we can just apply the flex row to all breakpoints, so the default. So now as we go through, it will always show there like that. And you know what? Even better, the default state of a flex box is a flex row, so we could just get rid of that altogether and just have our flex class on there, which makes this act as a flex box, and this is all good to go. Now let's click on the navigation, and down here under mobile menu, if we go down a little bit, here for when we want to show the mobile menu toggle, let's actually change this to our medium breakpoint, because that's sort of where we're starting to trigger all the changes. Now, just looking to finish off this header, the mobile menu needs to have that off-white background color. So what we could do is we could click on the menu here in Bricks Builder and then go to the mobile menu. We could go down to background and we could click on here and we could just set that color to match this color here. So we just copy from here, and then down here under HSL, we would put those values into there, and that would update the mobile menu, and it will change it from this charcoal to that color. But if we do it that way, it means that in the future, if we ever needed to update this color here, we would need to go into Bricks Builder and update that color there as well. So it's not ideal. So there is a way that we can go and make it so that we only update this color in one place and it updates everywhere in our website. And here's how we do it. So we come back to our base CSS and we'll go down here, and I'm going to add a new selector. So I'll do colon and root, and then inside here, and then we'll add a new variable that we can use in our CSS. So to do that, we just do 2 hyphens and then the name. So I'll do color off white, and then we set its value. So I'll just come up to Tailwind config, and then I'll get the value from here, and then down here I will paste that in there. So now this variable is accessible within our document. That's why it's on the root, and it has this value. So now that we've created this variable here, we can just copy this and then go up to Tailwind config, and where off white is, we just set this to be that variable. So to do that, we just get rid of that. And then here in quotes, we will add our variable. So we write var and open the brackets, and then we just do our double dash color off white. And now I'll click save changes. So now that we've registered this to be used in our website, I can come back in here inside of Bricks Builder, click on our nav menu, and then for the background, I can click over to here and then then go background color. And if we go down, we want to click on raw, and you can see this is where we add our variables. So I'll do var and open the brackets, and then I'll paste our variable name. So dash dash color off white. And now you can see that has changed. Now, if we save and preview this on the front end, if I bring this in and we open up the menu, you can see it has that off-white color. And then also if I right click and inspect our body element here, so I go body and we have a look for our body background color, you can see that it's now set to our variable that we created, which if I hover has the HSL values. So now in the future, if we ever want to update that color, we can just come into here and update it here. So I could set this to something like a blue color. So I'll just do blue there. And then if I save this and we go back to our front end, it's a very stark blue, quite hurting my eyes. But you can see our body background changed to blue. And if we drag it in and then open up the menu, you can see that is a blue as well. Now I'm going to just reset that back to what it is, the off-white color. And I've probably mentioned this many times in this video. I've been filming this over many days now, so I'm not quite sure what has been said already, but I am still getting my head around the best way to go and use Winden inside a Bricks Builder and Tailwind overall. And so I don't know, maybe the best way to go about registering your colors is to go into Tailwind config, get all of these colors from here, come back to your base CSS, and then put them into here. So register a variable for each. So I'll go like this, and then color, and then soft orange, and we get its value from here and paste it into there. And I just do that for all of them. So I'll go ahead and quickly do that. So we would end up with something like this. And then back here in Tailwind config, we would update all of these to use the variable name. So soft orange would go color soft orange. And this one would become soft red, off white, grayish blue, dark grayish blue, and navy. So if we saved that, with that setup, if we ever want to edit the colors in our website, we'd come down here and edit their values there, which would carry across into our Tailwind config, so it integrates back into the framework. But then we also have the added advantage of being able to access these variables inside a Bricks Builder. Because if you're ever trying to change a color on something in Bricks Builder, you could just click on something, just as we did with the mobile menu background color here, where we set it to our off-white. But definitely let me know in the comments below what you think about this. I just realized this as I was making today's video, and it seems to make sense. So now that we've set those variables up, let's open up our design and let's finish off this header. So the last thing that I think that we need to do is the color of the text. So this menu over here looks like it matches this text down here. I think it's going to match this variable here. So the dark grayish blue. So let's go ahead and apply this color to the links in our menu. So I'm just going to copy this from here. And then back here, let's go up to the desktop just so we can see what's happening. And as a first point of call, let's try and use a Tailwind class. So here I'm going to write text hyphen and then the name of the variable. So dark grayish blue, press enter. And that looks like it's just worked. Because we're styling the entire menu element here, I wasn't sure if that was going to carry through and style the children links in there. It looks like it has. But let's save this and just go to the front end and reload the page. So if we come to the front end, right click and inspect element, and then go to computed and just see what color is applying here. So RGB 93, 95, 121. If I just get this HSL value and come into here and convert it, the RGB equivalent is 93, 95, 121, which matches this. So it is in fact working. Now, if we bring in this menu here and we go to the mobile menu and we open this up, you can see that the links aren't showing. So we need to change the text color for the mobile menu. So back in here, let's click on our mobile menu element, and then we'll open up our mobile menu. And you can see we can't see the links, and we've already added the CSS class here for the dark grayish blue color, and it's not affecting the mobile menu here. So what we actually need to do is go back to Winden and get our variable. So that's the one that we're going to use. And then back in here under mobile menu, we're going to go down until we find top level menu. And then here under typography, let's click, and then color, and then under raw, we want to paste it in there. Now, I did mention at the start of today's video that you want to get in the habit of adding all the colors that you use in your website into the Bricks Builder color palette. So let's go ahead and do that. So the way that we can do that is here, I don't have any color palettes here because I just removed them. So let's click create color palette, and I'll just call this brand style guide and press enter. And then in here, I'm going to select that color palette. And then here under raw, I'm going to write var, and then I'm going to paste in our variable inside here. And then I'm going to come up here and click save. And now we've saved that to our color palette. And if I hover, it has our variable there added. And you could go ahead and do that for all the different variables. So if we came back into here for navy, for example, I'll just copy that and then come into here, go to color, raw, and I'll just overwrite that. So I'll paste in the navy color there and then we click save. And now we have both of them there and the variables names matches what we have in Winden. So then at any time in the future, we could just update the values here and it's going to update anywhere that we've added this color swatch inside of Bricks Builder. The idea of using Tailwind is that you're predominantly only using Tailwind classes, but using Bricks Builder, for example, trying to style this mobile navigation and the menus inside there, adding the CSS class didn't work. And then we had to go and edit a module inside of Bricks Builder and set a variable. And so I'm sure throughout the many websites that I'm going to create using Tailwind and Bricks Builder, there's going to be a lot of different instances that I probably run into where I can't apply a class and get it looking how I want. So I'm going to have to create a color swatch and apply the variable there. And I just wanted to put it in this video to show you how to do that. But coming back to what we're trying to achieve here, I'm going to set this back to the dark grayish blue color. And actually looking at our design again, the mobile menu is the navy color and the desktop is that lighter shade. So what we have here is exactly what we want. We have the mobile menu, the navy, and then as we go up and up and up, and I'll just click out of that, then it goes to the lighter shade. So let's save this, preview this on the front end, and it should be good to go. So if I pull this in, it looks like that. And then if I open that, we have that there. And then if I open this, we have that looking like that. So there's a few other things that we need to do with this mobile menu. Like when we hover, we need to change the color and a couple of other different things like show the active state and stuff like that as per the style guide. So we're going to need to change this to an orange color on hover, but I'm going to do the active states and the hover states towards the end of the video when we set everything up and I will just do them all in the one batch. So let's keep going with creating our design and move into designing this content area and the grids in it. So that's going to be everything that I'm putting into the selection here. And the way that I think we're going to code it is we'll code this as one row here. And then under that, we'll have a second row, which will be these tiles down here. Now, something else that we need to keep in mind is that if I get the edge of this navy sidebar here and I drag it down to the image below it, those edges match there. So the grid here is very accurate and things align. I also noticed that the bottom of this navy sidebar, if we just bring that across, that aligns to the bottom of the button. And then this side of the button also aligns with the side of the image under it. So it's things like this that we need to pay attention to before we jump in and start messing with the code. Because if we don't notice those things, it could cause us to do a lot of extra work. So with that in mind, let's start jumping in and building this inside of Bricks Builder. So to do this, I'm going to collapse the header and we'll go back to the largest design and we'll start doing it in here. And I'm going to go ahead and add a div. And then this is going to be our content. And then I'll add a div inside there. This will be our wrap. And then we'll have two columns in here. We'll have this here, and then we'll have the navy sidebar. So in this wrap, I'm going to go and add two more divs, and this will be col1, and this will be col2, which will be the sidebar, the navy sidebar. And this is going to be the featured post. So this is the featured post, and this is the sidebar. Now coming back to our featured post, inside there, we're going to have the image, which goes to full width, and then we have two columns under that. If we think about this in terms of a WordPress installation, this is actually going to be a query, so a loop item. So this is probably going to be like a featured post, and then down the bottom, these are going to be 3 posts, and it looks like they're going to be from the gaming category. So we'll create a gaming category, we'll add 3 posts into there, and then down the sidebar here, we also have 3 other posts, which are our latest post. So maybe this is actually a post that this website owner selects to show here. Then we have our 3 most recent posts showing in the sidebar. And then down the bottom, we have 3 blog posts that are showing from a category called gaming. So what I'm quickly going to do, I'm going to come in here into WordPress and I'm going to go to my post and I'm going to quickly create those blog posts so we have some actual data to loop through and work with in our design. So I've just finished up doing that and I'll quickly run you through what I've done. So I created a category here called gaming, and then I just added 3 posts into that. So that's reviving, top 10, and the growth. And that covers these 3 blog posts at the bottom. I also did the bright future of Web3. And if we just open that up, I added a featured image in here, a little bit of text there, and that'll cover this area here. So the featured image, the title, an excerpt, and a button. Then I also have these 3 here, hydrogen, the downsides, and is VC funding, which is these posts at the sidebar. Oh, and just lastly, for these 3 at the bottom here, I did go and add their featured images there so we can pull them in the loop. So with that done, let's go up to our content area, and like our header, let's add our section class. So I'll go here and write section and enter. That adds the padding. And then our wrap, we will add our wrap class and enter. And that's what pulls it in and centers it on the page. Again, all done in the previous parts of today's video. So if you skipped ahead here, definitely go back and watch those areas so you can follow along. So with that done, let's go ahead and sit these 2 columns next to each other. And to do that, I'm going to use CSS Grid. And the reason that I am going to use that is because we have a lot of different things that are lining up on this page here. So again, for example, if I was to screenshot here and pull straight down, the edges of these 2, especially over here, align. And the same with here, they align there. So when there's a lot of things that are aligning, I'm finding it's a lot easier to use grid. And hopefully throughout this section, you'll see why. So looking at this, I would say that this takes up 2/3 of the width, and then this is about 1/3. And if we work off a 12 column grid, then 2/3 would be 8, and then 1/3 would be 4. Now coming back into the Tailwind docs, if we search for grid, so Flexbox and grid, and go down, this is where we can start getting the utility classes to build our grid. So you can also search up here for grid directly. So I'll do that. And now we can see some examples. So if I want to make a grid, we add the grid class. Then we add how many columns we want it to be. So grid hyphen cols hyphen the number of columns. And we can add rows as well. And we can also add a gap. So a gap of 4 would add 1 rem in between all the rows and columns. Now looking at our design, it needs to start off by default being 1 column. So 1 column grid. But as it grows into our larger breakpoints, we need to break this out into the 2 columns. So to do that, I'll come back in here, and then by default, it will be 1 column, which it already is. It's stacking on top of each other. Everything's in 1 column. If we go to the mobile, that's how we need it to be. So all we really need to do is go to our medium breakpoint, and when it reaches this or greater, we will make it 2 columns. So here, I'll write MD colon, and then grid hyphen cols hyphen 2 and enter. And now that changes it to 2 columns for the medium breakpoint and up. But then if we go back to the default, it's in the 1 column. So coming back to our larger breakpoint, now we need to make this 2/3 and this 1/3. So to do that, back in here, we can go down to grid column start and end, and we'll click into that. And you can see we get some CSS classes here. But if we go down and look at some examples, you can see that this is pretty much what we want to do, this second row here. So if the parent is set to grid cols 3, so it's saying in the grid there's 3 different columns, then on the child, we use col hyphen span hyphen 2, and that means it spans 2 of the 3 columns. And so if we come back into here for this parent, we actually don't want to specify that it's 2 columns. What we could do is get rid of that and then go MD, so we're only targeting the medium breakpoint again and greater, and we'll write grid hyphen cols hyphen, and then we could do 3. Now, I am fairly used to working with a 12 column grid, so for this example, I'm just going to go ahead and make this grid cols 12, and then on each child, we will specify how many cols it should span in the grid. I'm going to go col span and then 8 and press enter, and then for this sidebar over here, I'll do col span, and this one spans 4 columns of the 12 column grid, like that. Now coming back to the parent where we made the grid, let's go ahead and add a gap here. So coming back to our design, if I was to measure this out here, we're looking at about 30 pixels. So here in the docs, if we click on gap, we can get all the values there. So if I search for something like 32 pixels, it would be a gap of 8. And you can see you can also space out just the y-axis, so the top and the bottom, or just the x-axis, so the left and the right. So for this example, I'm going to do gap 8, which adds 32 pixels. We wanted 30, it's close enough. But before we add that, we also need to keep in mind that's the gap for our medium device breakpoint and greater. But what about the mobile? If we open up this and then open up the mobile here, we can see that this gap of 30 pixels actually gets larger on a mobile. So if I was to measure this out here, it's about 65 pixels. So in Tailwind docs, if we look for something close to 65 pixels, we have 64, which is a gap of 16. So by default, we want to set the gap of 16, which would be the mobile. And as it hits the medium, we want to reduce that and set it to a gap of 8. So in here, let's go to the mobile and we'll add a gap of 16 and press enter. And then on the medium and up, we'll add a medium and we'll do a gap of 8 and press enter. Coming back to our mobile portrait, you can identify that there's obviously an issue here. So if we click on this column, this is actually spanning 8 columns, but on the mobile, it's actually just one column until it reaches the medium. So what we actually need to do is come back into here and get rid of this col span 8 and just change it to only applying to medium and up. So col span 8 and press enter. And then on this one here where it's col span 4, we just want to get rid of that and only apply it to medium and greater. So col span and 4, enter. And now that's all set up. So we have a larger space between the columns. And as we go up, once we hit the medium breakpoint, they sit next to each other and we have a smaller gap. And that continues all the way up. So coming back to that third-party plugin by the Winden developer, that's going to allow us to edit using plain classes. You can see that once we had added that col span here and realized there was an error on the mobile version, instead of having to remove the class and then re-enter it with the MD colon as a prefix, so it only applied to that breakpoint and up, it would have been cool if it was a plain class. We could just come into there and then just quickly add our MD to the existing class, and it would have made it a lot faster, a lot less clicks. So very interested to see when that actual plugin is released. If you're not sure what I'm talking about, I did a section in today's video on a plugin that is soon to be released to help you use Tailwind inside a Bricks builder, and one of its features is called plain classes. So if you want to learn more about that, in the description below under this video, look for a chapter of today's video that has the word plain classes in it, and they'll tell you all about the feature and what it does. So coming back to our larger breakpoint, let's actually start to add content in here. So let's focus firstly on this first post here, which is going to be our featured post. So we're going to have 2 different rows here. The top row is going to have the featured image. Then under that in the row, it's going to be split into 2 columns with the post title on the left, the excerpt on the right, and then the read more button. So coming into here, let's go ahead and add a div, and we can call this post image. And then inside here, let's go ahead and add a new element, and it's going to be an image element. So we'll add that in there. And this is going to be col1, so our post image. Now inside there, we also need to go and add another div in there, and this would be col2, and this would be the post content. So that's going to be this here. And then inside there, we're going to have 2 other columns. So inside here, let's go ahead and add a div here, and we'll call this col1, and this will be the post title. So let's go ahead and add a heading element inside there, and we'll call this post title. And then up here, I'll add another div, and we'll call this col2, and this is going to be the excerpt plus the read more. And so in here, let's add some basic text for the excerpt. So I'll just rename that to excerpt. So under the excerpt, we need to add the read more button. So we'll go ahead and do that. Now, there's a couple of different ways that we can add a button into here. For now, I'm just going to go up to here and add a bricks builder button, but we might end up changing that when we get to styling the button. But for now, let's just leave it like this. So the next thing that we need to do is set up our query here inside a bricks builder. So coming back here onto our featured post, which has the whole container here. If we just collapse that, you can see everything's inside there. We want to come over here and say, use query loop and turn this on. And then we want to come into here to select the query parameters. And you can already see it's repeating all of this. So the first thing that we want to do is limit it to 1. So post per page, we will write 1. Now only 1 is getting output, and we want to output our posts, and the post type is going to be our post type. And now we need to somehow tell this query to specifically get our featured post, because we don't want to go ahead and just get our latest blog post, because they're going to be listed here on the right hand side in the sidebar. That's why it says new. These are from a specific category called gaming. So this one here, we actually want to, as a blog owner, specify which one gets output here on the page. One really easy way that we could go ahead and do that would just to be create a category called featured and just put the one post in there. So here under post, I'll go to categories and I'll just write featured and click add category. So there it is there. And then let's go to our posts and then go into this one, the bright future of web 3.0. And let's just go to categories and then put it in our featured category, uncheck uncategorized and update it. So now back in Bricks Builder, if I just save this and reload the page just so we can get that list of categories again. If I come back into where we started the query, you can see because it has the query loop icon there to let us know that there's a query being run on this element. So I'll click on here, I'll click over on this icon to define the parameters of the query, and I'll go down and where it says terms to include, I will click here and go featured. So it's only going to get posts from our post type post, it's going to only return one result, and that has to be the post that is from the featured category. So now if I save that and preview it on the front end, it's not getting that post data. So we set up the query, but now we need to go into each of these elements and map the query data to these elements. So for the image here, if I click over here, we want to go where it says select dynamic data. We want to click the lightning bolt and we want to search for featured image and add it there. And now that's output. Now you can specify a size. For me, I'm just going to go full size, and then let's go down to the post title, and we want to get rid of that text there, and then click the lightning bolt for dynamic data so that we can access the query data, and we'll add the post title. And now that's added there. And before I do these last couple of settings, I want to save this quickly, and I want to show you a new feature that was just introduced in one of the recent versions of Bricks Builder. If we go back to our dashboard and go to Bricks and then to Settings, and then we go over to Builder, if we scroll all the way to the bottom, under dynamic data here, and these are all tagged as experimental, so it is part of the beta, we have this here, render dynamic data text on the canvas. So if I enable this and then save settings, if I come back into the builder, look what happens here. Currently, we can only see the post title tag, and if I click on it, it still just says post title. Now, if I reload the page and go up, you can see it's actually showing us a preview of the blog post title. And then if I go down here and I click to edit this, it changes back to the actual tag, the dynamic data tag that Bricks Builder uses. And if I click out of it, it goes back to showing me the actual post title. So a really cool feature that allows you to design your website using real data when you're going out and using this query loop feature inside of Bricks Builder. So now let's go down to this text here, and we need to add an excerpt. So I'll go into here and then click up here. And if I search for excerpt, there it is there. Now, if I click out of that, then we see a live preview. Now, in the Bricks Builder documentation, we can see that the post excerpt tag, we can do a colon and then write some numbers. So 55 here, and that limits the post excerpt to 55 words. So coming back into here, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 lines there. So if we feel like this is going to be too many words, we could click into here and then limit it to 25 words and then click out of it. And now it's a lot shorter. But I'm also going to show you later in this video a really cool feature that Tailwind offers us to limit the number of lines that are output in a design, because we're going to be using it in today's design and it's very powerful. And lastly, let's do this button while we're here. So I'll change this to read more, and then this needs to link to our blog post. So in the link type, I'm going to do dynamic data, and then in here we're going to do the post link, and then I'll click save. And then on the front end, let's reload this, and you can see that it's starting to come together now. And then this button, if we click, that opens up the blog post. So now that we've got all of this linked up and ready to go, let's lay out this bottom row into the 2 columns. So coming back here, that's going to be col 2. You can see it's highlighted in the green bounding box. So to do this, we're going to apply our grid class. So here, remember we have 2 columns in here, one for the post title, which will be on the left, and one for the excerpt and read more, which will be on the right. Again, left and right. So back here on the container, let's apply our grid class. So I'll write grid and enter. And here for the 2 columns, we only want this to apply on the medium device, breakpoint, and higher. So I'll do MD and then grid cols and 2 and press enter. And now it's in the 2 columns. So checking our mobile design, we have the 1 column and then going up and up. As it hits the medium, it goes into our 2 columns as we expected, and it carries that on up. So I'm going to leave that there. We've got the basic structure down for this featured post, but I want to come back and look at this design, because if we have a look at the mobile, this featured image starts off as a square and then it goes to a landscape on larger devices. Now it actually looks like they're using 2 different images in this design. Now in a second, I'm going to show you how you can go out and add a new image field to your blog post for that square format, and then how to add that into Bricks Builder so you show the square, and then from the medium breakpoints and above, we switch to the landscape version. But before I show you how to do this layout with the 2 different images, I want to show you how you could get something similar just using 1 image and some utility classes that Tailwind gives us. So it won't get us to look exactly like this, but I think it's worth showing you that this is possible. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this, and then let's go back to our mobile version, because this is where we want it to start off as a square. So starting off as a square, how would we go and do that? It's actually very simple using Tailwind. If we come back to the Tailwind docs, we can search for aspect ratio and click into here, and it says utilities for controlling the aspect ratio ratio of an element. And one of them is square. So we can just get this class, and then on this image here, we can add that class and press enter. And now that's a square. But that's obviously stretching the image and it just looks a little bit distorted. So we need to change how this image reacts to when we resize it into a square. And in Tailwind, you can also do that with a class. So if we come back into here and we go down to where it says object fit, if we click into here, we have object contain, cover, fill, none, scale down, and we have some examples of how it's going to work. So this is cover, this is contain, where it sits within its parent, its container. Using fill stretches it and distorts it, and then down here scales it down. So the one that we're going to use in this example is this one here, object cover, resizes an element's contents to cover its container. So I'm going to get this from here, and then back here on our image, I'll go up to here and add that CSS class and press enter. And now that is a square, and it's stretched the image to fill its container, to fill the square, but it hasn't distorted the image. And now we need to go up to our medium breakpoint and reset it to being its default aspect ratio. So back here, let's go to aspect ratio again, and we have this one here, aspect auto, which just sets it to what it normally wants to be. So let's get this here, aspect-auto, and come back, and we're going to add a new class here, but we're only going to apply this for the medium breakpoint and greater. So I'll do md : aspect-auto and press enter, and now we've got it back to its origins, back to how the image wants to load. And the pros of doing it that way is we only have to go and upload one image for every single post, and we get this resized square format on smaller devices. The downside is that you're not going to be able to crop an image exactly where you want it in the square format. And so if you do want that control, you might want to go and add a second image field to your posts. So now that we've gone ahead and done that, I have actually decided to show you how you'd go and set it up with the second option here for this image, where we go and create a custom field, and which is a second image field on a blog post. So we can add a featured image for the desktop, a featured image for the mobile, and then change them using Bricks Builder based on their devices. So let me go and show you how you would go and do that, because it's not going to take us too long, and I think it's worth sharing how it works inside of Bricks Builder. So the plugin that I'm going to use to register my custom fields is going to be Advanced Custom Fields. So I've gone ahead, logged into my account and downloaded the plugin, and I've just installed and activated it here. Once you do that, you get this menu item over here. So under custom fields, we're going to go and click add new, and then we need to give this group of fields a name, and then we add our fields down here. So the group of these fields, I'm just going to call like blog posts, and then scrolling down, our field type is going to be image, which is here. So I'll click there, and then the field label, I'm going to say featured image. And I think because Tailwind works mobile first, our featured image that WordPress gives us out of the box, let's leave that as our square image, which is going to be our mobile. And then the second image we're creating here will be the one that outputs on a desktop or larger devices. So this is going to be our featured image, but here it's going to be for our desktop. So the field name is featured image desktop, and then down here return format, so we can return an image array, image URL, or image ID. I'm going to leave this as image array for now. And then over here, the library, we want to allow this user to go out and add an image from the media library. So we don't want to change anything here. We just want to give them access to the whole library. So I'm going to go ahead and click save changes here, which creates that field group, and then we'll save changes here to register this custom field. And now that that's done, let's go to our blog post. So we'll go all post, and then the blog post that we want to do this on is this featured one here, the bright future of Web 3.0. So over here, I'll click into that blog post, and if we scroll down to the bottom, we can see our custom field has been registered down here. So let's go ahead and click add image, and then here is the desktop image that we want to output here, and we'll go select, and then over here for this featured image, let's replace this image with the mobile one, which is the square, and we'll go set featured image. So this will show on the smaller devices, this shows on the larger. So let's go ahead and click update, and now that is all set up. If you did want to move this field from here over into the sidebar with this one here, if you go back to advanced custom fields and you go down, you can see that you have some settings here. So the location, so we want to show this if the post type is equal to only our blog posts, so our post type. If we go to presentation and go down, this is where we change where it shows and how it looks. So here, let's go and move this to the side and go save changes. And then back here, let's reload the page. And then if we scroll down to the bottom here, you can see there it is there. Now you can see that the name of our field group gets output here. So if we wanted to change that, we could come up to here and then we could give it another name. So extra extra post fields might make sense. So save changes. Back here, let's reload the page, and going down, extra post fields, and it makes a little bit more sense there. We also have featured image desktop. It gives us that label there to help us in the future. So now that we've gone and registered our custom field and assigned 2 different images to this blog post, back here in Bricks Builder, I'm going to go ahead and just save this and reload the page, because if we don't reload the page, Bricks Builder doesn't have access to that new custom field that we just created. So now it should have access to it. So back here, our image that we set up here using the aspect ratio utility class in Tailwind, I'm just going to rename this and call this Tailwind. And then inside here, I'm going to go ahead and add a second image module and go here and then click on this. And I'm going to quickly rename this and I'll call this ACF for Advanced Custom Fields. And then for this image, let's go up to here and we want to select dynamic data. So I'll go select dynamic data. And then if you scroll right to the bottom, you can see we have ACF here registered now, and all the advanced custom fields that have registered inside advanced custom fields will show here. So there's our featured image desktop. So I'll click on that and you can see it's trying to output the large format of that image, which is this one here. Now I'm just going to go ahead and change this to full. So it outputs the full size version of that image. Now remember that this image here from our custom field is going to be our desktop, our larger devices. The default featured image is going to be the square one for our mobiles. So we need to go ahead and add that. So I don't think I need to have this Tailwind one for the remainder of today's tutorial. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this element from here. So I'll right click and go delete. And then here, let's rename this. So this is going to be the featured image desktop, and that's going to be advanced custom fields. And then inside here, let's go ahead and add a new image element. So there, and I'll just drag this up, and this is going to be our featured image, and this is going to be our featured image default. So on this one, we need to go and map the dynamic data again, and this is going to be for the featured image, this one here. And I'm just going to output the full size version of it. So now we have both of those there. So now all we need to do is just show and hide them based on the different breakpoints, which means that the default is going to show by default, obviously. But then when it gets to our medium breakpoint, we need to hide it. So to do that, we're going to go up to here and add our class. So medium, hidden, and press enter. And now medium and greater, it will be hidden. So if we go up through these now, it's still showing, and then medium, it hides, which is what we want. Now coming back to our desktop one here, we want this to show only on the medium and greater. So by default, it's going to be hidden. So I'll just add the hidden class to it here and press enter. And then as we go up to the medium breakpoint, we'll do medium block and press enter. And now that's outputting. So let's just save what we just did and then preview that on the front end. So this is our default image there. And then as it goes up and up, it changes there. Now, one question you might have is, because we're adding 2 different images to the page and then showing one and hiding the other, do both images still download in the back end? And what we can do is we can look at the code to work out what's actually happening. So if I right click here on the front end and go inspect element, you can see here are our 2 different images. So here's the mobile, which is currently hidden, and then here is the desktop. Now, if I have a look at this one here for the mobile, you can see that this image has a CSS class bricks-lazy-hidden, and the loading is lazy, which means it's lazy loading. So it's not going to actually download this image unless the browser is actually showing it on the page. So Bricks Builder handles not downloading images that aren't actually trying to be shown on the page, which obviously makes your website load faster, which is what we want. Another great way to check what's actually going on here is to go over to the network tab. And then with the page open, you just reload the page. And then you can see all the different assets that your browser has downloaded. So if you filter over here by the type column and you go down to images, so JPEG, you can see we've downloaded 3 JPEGs. 2 are images of me, which is actually just up here in the admin bar. So this image here and this image there. And then the desktop image, which is here. If we bring this in, I wonder if we can see it download the mobile. So we've just done that. Let's just make the browser a little bit larger again. And now you can see it's downloaded that mobile image. So this is a really great way just to confirm that you are in fact downloading images that are visible and you're not downloading images that are being hidden on the page using CSS. So next up, I want to focus on outputting the content in our Navy sidebar here. So this is going to be a heading element. And then under that, we're going to have a query loop where we loop through and output 3 different blog posts like this. So in Bricks Builder, let's go back to our large display and then I'll click into here and this is where we're going to work. So looking at this, the sidebar bottom here lines up with this button here, which means that this column here and this column here are equal heights. So coming back here on this sidebar, I'm going to go ahead and apply our background navy. So I'll go up to here and go BG-navy and press enter. And now that's applied. And then let's go ahead and add our content inside here. So here, let's go ahead and I'm going to add a heading element. So we'll add that in there. And I'll just update the text here to say new. And the color of this is going to be our orange color here. So back in Winden Settings, if we go down, it's going to be our soft orange color. This one here, which under Tailwind config is soft orange. So I'll just copy that. And then here I'll click on the heading. And then up here, I'll write text hyphen soft orange and press enter. So now we have our color there. And now we need to go ahead and add our post loop. So I'll go up to here and I'll add a div element and I'll just call this post loop. And then we just need to add the post title and the excerpt. So let's go and add a heading element here for the post title. And then we're going to add some basic text here for the excerpt. And then for this heading, the text needs to be white. So I'll go text white and press enter. And I haven't registered that myself. That just comes from the color scheme framework of Tailwind, text hyphen white. So I'll get out of that. And then this text here, it looks like it's that light gray color here, which is going to be the same color as this here. And then this down there. So back in Winden, if I have a look, it's going to be the grayish blue color. So back into here, let's go and click on this here. And then we'll go up here and go text hyphen grayish blue and press enter. And I think that's it. So that looks good. Now let's rename this. So this is going to be post title and this is going to be excerpt. And then coming up to our post loop, let's go ahead and create our query loop. So I'll activate this and then set our parameters. So it's going to be posts from the post's post type. And these are our 3 latest blog posts, hence the word new. So the order by is going to be date, descending, and we're going to output 3. And then under terms to exclude, I'm going to come into here and exclude our featured categories. And I'm also going to come in here and exclude our gaming categories. And the reason that I'm doing that is the featured category is going to be the post that is added here. And these are our 3 latest blog posts. So you can imagine if I'm going out and today I create this blog post here to set it as my featured, but then it also is in my newest post because it's my most recent post, it would show here and there. So we don't want that. So we're going to exclude the feature category from over here, but also the gaming category we're going to exclude as well because they're going to show down the bottom here. And if we exclude the gaming category and the featured, so they're not output over here, at least we're not going to be showing the same blog post in many different parts on the same page on our homepage. So now that we've done that, we need to go ahead and map the data. So let's come back to our post title and then I'll just get rid of that. And then we need to go dynamic data and then post title. So now that's shown there. And then for the excerpt, we just need to do the same thing. So I'll remove that, click here, and then we need to output the excerpt. Now something inside Bricks Builder that we looked at before, we can do a colon and then limit this. So I could write 25. That's going to limit it to 25 words. So it makes it a bit shorter. We could even go down to something like 10. So we get it showing on the 2 lines. We could try 13. So I think that looks pretty good. So before we go in and tidy this up and change the font sizes, change the spacing, make sure it looks like it should on the default layout on the mobile and goes up responsively, how we need it to work, let's go ahead and just output the content for this last section down the bottom. And once we have all the content on the page, we'll look at finessing it and bringing it all together to match this design. So breaking up what we need here is we need 3 different columns. And then inside each of these columns is going to be 2 columns. On the left is the image, and on the right is the post content. This is going to be another query loop, only getting posts that are being output from the gaming category. And these are going to be featured images here. Now we also have numbers that increment from 1, 2, and 3 over here. Now we also have counters over here. So this goes 0, 1, 0, 2, 0, 3. I'm going to show you how to do that using a little bit of CSS. It's very simple and very straightforward, but I think it's worth going through because it's something that I actually didn't know how to do until this year as well. So it's definitely worth going through how to use counters in CSS. Let's go up and we have our content here. Then we have our wrap. So I'm just going to collapse that. And now let's go ahead and add that next section down here. So we're going to do it here inside this content area. So I'll go up to here and we'll add a div. And this is going to be another wrap. So our wrap, we need to go and add our wrap class that we set up before, which pulls it in and does everything that we set up previously inside of our config, inside our base CSS for the wrap. So remembering from before, And now we need to start building our grid. So in here, let's go ahead and add a div. And this is going to be one of the columns. And then inside this column, which would be this area here, we need to have 2 other columns in there. So here I'm going to add 2 more divs. So 1 and 2. And I'm just going to call this left and right. And we could even rename this to post item, left and right. And then inside the left, we need that featured image. So I'll go up to here and add an image element, add this, and I'll call this featured image. And then in the right column, we need to add the counter and then the post title and the excerpt. So let's go up to here and we'll just do the post title for now. So post title and then the excerpt, which will be basic text. And I'll just rename these. So post title and excerpt. So I'm just going to collapse the left and the right. So with that done, what we need to do now is set up our loop. And so if we have a look, this is our post item with the left and the right. And this here post item is going to be this. So this is what we set our query loop on, and we're going to output another 2 posts. So back on here, we will go use query loop because this is going to be what's repeated. And we'll go up to here under query. The post type is post. And then we're going to get the posts of the posts post type. And then we just need to make sure that we're only outputting, so terms to include, and they have to be from the gaming category. And we also want to do 3 posts output, and there they are there. So let's go ahead and map the data. So I'll just expand these again. And the featured image, we will go to select dynamic data and we'll search for featured image and press enter. And then we will go to the full, and you can see that's starting to output the content. The post title, we'll also remove that and map to the post title. And then the excerpt, we'll remove that and map to the excerpt as well. And we might limit this to the same 13 words like that. So now we obviously need to go ahead and sit these next to each other and get them looking how we need in terms of the grid layout. So I'm going to collapse these again, and we're just going to focus up here because remember, this here is repeating 3 times. So in the code, there is actually 3 of these. So let's go up 1 level and let's use utility classes inside of Tailwind to create the grid. So here by default, if we have a look at the mobile version and go down, you can see they're just sitting on top of each other. So by default, it's 1 column. So back up here, we're going to set this to be a grid. And obviously it doesn't do anything. And if we go to the mobile, they're going to sit on top of each other. And as we get to the medium, this is where we want to make it 3 cols. So up here, we'll go medium, grid, cols 3. But also remember how I said I like to work with a 12 column grid? I'm just used to doing it. I'm actually going to set this to grid cols 12, which means I've just set this to be a 12 column grid from the medium breakpoint and up. And then back here on the post item, I need to make this expand 4 cols. So each one's 4 cols, which adds up to 12, which makes them a third. So on the loop item, we're going to go up to here, and from the medium, we're going to do a col span of 4. We used this before, so I'll click that. And now they're each spanning the 4 columns in the 12 column grid. If we go back to the mobile, you can see that nothing's changed. So that's how we need it to be, 1 column, and up to the medium, it is like so. Now, if we go up to the larger breakpoint and go back to our design, remember, we have to really pay attention to the grid here because the edges of our navy sidebar here align to the left border of this image down below. Everything's very aligned, very strict. This down here would align there as well, and then these align there as well. Now, if we go up and look at this other wrap that we used up here, you can see that I set this as a 12 column grid for the medium, and I also gave it a gap of 8. And it's really important that we remember these because this is a 12 column grid with a gap of 8 between them. And that's why currently this edge here of our navy sidebar is not aligning with it down there. Because if I go back to here, we haven't set a gap here. So the gutters in between the columns aren't equal. And that's why they're not lining up. They're both 12 column grids, but the gaps are off. So back here, let's go and set a gap here. So for the medium and up, we'll do a gap of 8 and press enter. And now you can see that the edges of these are all aligning. Now you might be wondering why the edges of this here aren't aligning with this image down there, because they do in this design here. And that's because if we click back into here and go up to where we created the grid, which I think was here, we did a grid of 2, but we didn't set the gap. Remember, the gap has to be equal. So up here, let's set the gap. So I'll go medium, gap of 8, and watch what happens when I press enter. These are going to align up like that. So now that we've done that, let's go ahead and just revise the layout of these post items down here. Now we just need to make this a 2-column grid. So the left and the right. So back up to here, we need to set this to a grid. So we'll go grid and press enter. And then for medium and up, we're going to do grid cols 2 and press enter. And then having a look at the gaps here. So if we were to measure this out, and that would be, say, 30 pixels. If I measure the gaps between the image and the content here, we're looking at like 25. So if we go back to the Tailwind docs and we have a look for something close to 25, we have 24, which is a 6. So let's go back here, and I'm just going to exit out of that, and we'll go gap, and we'll set that to 6. And now that's spaced these out there. Okay, so I just realized that what we were about to try and do isn't going to work. So it's in relation to this section down the bottom here. So instead of refilming and just acting like I didn't just go ahead and make a mistake with this, I want to explain what the mistake is and why this isn't going to work, and then I'll show you the way to actually go and do it. So the mistake that I've made with this bottom section is that we were going ahead and using CSS grid. So if I go back up to our wrap here, remember we set this to a 12-column grid with a gap of 8, and then each post inside there spanned the 4 columns so that these would line up over here. The thing with a CSS grid, and this is as far as I know, you can't set a fixed width for a column. And we're going to need that for our images over here, because if I have a look, the size of this image here is the same size as it shows here on our desktop and mobile, which means the only thing that's changing the width is going to be this right-hand column here with the content. So we need to, if I just screenshot this now, this is going to be set at about 100 pixels width. That's going to be a fixed 100 pixels width. And then this column over here needs to resized based on the viewport. So I just thought this was a very interesting thing, again, to leave my video here, that CSS grid, it's so powerful, but sometimes it doesn't work. This is a good example of where we will choose Flexbox instead of the grid. So coming back into here, if I go to the wrap, this is still our 12-column grid, and then inside there, each of the post items that's repeated spans 4 columns of the 12-column grid, which gives us that 3-column, and everything lines up. We can still leave this as a grid, but it's the grid inside here that we were setting up, so the left and the right. This is where we need to go ahead and use Flexbox. So I'm going to go back to this post item, and I'm going to remove the grid here and the 2-column grid and the gap. So now our posts are still in the 3 columns again from our wrap, but then inside there, now they're just in the 1 column. So let's go ahead and use Flexbox to add our 2 columns here. So if I come back here into Tailwind docs and we go to sizing and width, and we go down the bottom, you can see this is how we set a fixed width. So we put in square brackets, the value, and then the unit. So back in here on our left column, let's go ahead and just add a width, and then hyphen, and then in square brackets, and we'll write 100 pixels and press enter. And for some reason, I'm not sure if this is a bug with the current beta version, it's not going and updating these other ones. So let's just save this and reload the page. So now they're each 100 pixels, and then we'll come back down here. So this has the 100 pixels fixed width there. Now we need to go and use Flexbox to get them sitting next to each other and behaving as we need. So let's go ahead, and I'm just going to collapse these so it's easier to follow along. So I'm going to go back to the post item, and we need to set this to be a flex. So up here, I'm going to add the flex class and press enter. And by default, a flex box wants to display as flex row. And so that's why they're sitting next to each other, because there's enough room when this one's 100 pixels wide for this one to sit next to it in the row. So that's why we've already got our 2 columns there. So now we just need to go and add some spacing between them. And if I come back here and have a look on the mobile, if I just get the spacing from here and just estimate that's like 25 pixels, and we go over to here and have a look if this changes at all, and this is going to be 25 pixels. So it doesn't change. We can just set the 1 gap property. So if I go up to here and search for gap, and we look for something around there, so 24 pixels is a gap of 6. So back here on the post item, we're just going to go up to here and add a new class, and we'll do gap 6. And this is going to be the default, again, the mobile and every other responsive breakpoint because it doesn't change. And now if we go through the breakpoints and go down a little bit, so we're going to clean this up in just a second, but you can see that is looking how it needs to look, like that. And then as we go up, it still retains that all through the breakpoint. Now, something that I do want to look at here is that these images are not outputting how we need them to be. I can tell that this one here in the middle is larger than this one over here, and I think this one over here. If we go back here and I just quickly measure out what these should be, we're looking at 100 pixels by 128 pixels high, and that's definitely not that. If we go back and have a look on the front end, what we have for this one here, go inspect element, you can see that this is outputting as 90 by 114. So something's definitely wrong there. So I think let's go back to this left column here and let's just remove the width that we set on that. And let's go to our featured image here and let's try and set some widths and heights on this. So the width, we want it to be that 100 pixels. So width 100 pixels, and I'll get out of that. And then let's also set our max width as 100 pixels. And that seems to have fixed it. Let's have a look. So let's save this and reload the front end, and let's have a look at these now. That's 100 by 127, and then this one here is 100 by 127, and this one here 100 by 127. So that seems to have fixed it as well. So let's inspect element again and let's just see what was going on, because it fixed it when we added. If we go back here, it's all about investigating. I don't know if it's like Bricks Builder doing something weird with Tailwind here, but it seems to be this max width of 100 pixels that fixed it, because if we remove that, it breaks it. And if we add it back in, it seems to fix it. So it's definitely doing something. So something's setting the max width. And I wonder if it's this. So if I undo that, maybe it is this here coming from the Bricks CSS, setting it to a max width of 100%. No, it doesn't seem to be. I don't know. Let me know in the comments below if you know why that fixed it, but yeah, it does seem to work. So we set the width to be 100 pixels, the max width to be 100 pixels, and that seems to have fixed it there. And that should carry on as we start from our default down here. So like this, and as we expand and expand, see how this is a fixed width column now. And because we're using Flexbox, it just expands to fill the rest of the space on the row, which is what we need. And then it goes up to our grid. Now, the last bit of content we need to output on this page before we look at tidying all of this up is going to be our counter here. So 01, 02, and 03. And again, I mentioned we're going to use CSS to do this, and it's very simple to do. So to add our counter, I'm going to go in here in this right column, and we're going to add a new element called basic text. And I'll just drag that up above the post title. So I'll call this counter, and we'll just go back to the mobile portrait because we're going to add a little bit of custom CSS that needs to apply for all different breakpoints. So from our mobile and up. So I'll go ahead and get rid of that text there. And then we'll go back to our wrap up here. And this is the wrap for our gaming category. And so on this, we're going to go under style and then CSS and go down. And we're just going to add this code here. So root, and it says down here, use root to target the element wrapper. So when runtime, when it generates the code, it's going to get the ID of our wrap here, and it's going to replace root here with the ID of this element. And then it's going to reset the counter to 0. So counter hyphen reset, and we just write post hyphen counter. You can just call this whatever you want, whatever makes sense to you. So I'm just going to say post hyphen counter. And basically what this is doing is it's creating a variable in CSS for our counter called post counter, and it's setting it to 0. So now all we need to do is when it goes through our post items here, we just need to get this variable here and increment it by 1 and then output it on the page. So to do that, we're going to go to our counter element, which is where we're going to increment then display it. And here again, under the style tab, we'll come down here and you want to add this code here, which is root before. And again, at runtime, it's going to replace the word root with the ID of this element here. So before this post item, it's going to increment our counter. Remember, we just reset it to 0. So now it's going to make it 1 by incrementing it. And then the content on the before element is going to be 0 and then the number, which will be 1. And then as it loops through and goes to the next item in our query loop, it'll increment this variable from 1 to 2, and then it will output before 0, 2. So you can see it happening here, 01, 02, 03. So we could write whatever here, and you can see it's just putting that before our counter. So if that's a little bit confusing, just re-watch this section. It's really not all that complex. Basically up here, we're just creating a new variable for our counter called post counter, and it's setting it to 0. And then inside here, we're incrementing that variable and then outputting that variable with a 0 before it. And that's just looping through and incrementing each time here in our post query loop, which is here. That's really all it's doing. So now if we go back to our larger devices and just have a look, you can see now we have that counter there. So now that we have all the content output on our page, let's just do some final tweaks and get everything linking where it needs to go. And then we'll move into finessing the design and making it look exactly like our reference. So clicking on this button, let's just make sure this is hyperlinked. I can see it's going to the post URL. So this is linked over here. So the post title, we probably want to link this as well. So let's go over to here and go link to, and we will go dynamic data. And this is going to go to the post link. So we've just linked the title of the post over here. I don't think we need to link the excerpt. So I think this top area is now complete. Down here, this post title will link. So we'll link to, and we'll go to dynamic data. And then over here, we'll go to post link. And I think we should probably link the featured image here. So let's click over to here, and link to, we'll go to other URL, and then here we'll go dynamic data, and then here we will map the post link, and now that's linked. Oh, and I think I missed this here. The post title will want to link this as well. So we'll go dynamic data, and we're going to link this to the post title. And we also want to make sure that the headings that we're using here are correct. So this one here, the bright future, I'd probably make this a H2. And this one down the side here, I might make this a H4. So they're H4s. And then down here as well, I might set these to be H4s as well. So let's just save that. So now let's go ahead and try and get this design here to look as much like this design as we possibly can. Let's go ahead and just focus on this top area here and get everything looking like it should. So let's go to the mobile breakpoint and let's start working our way through here. So having a look at the button here, we need to change the color of this button, and that color is going to be our soft red color. So I'm going to copy this, and with our button selected, I'm going to go up to here and go BG-soft red and press enter. And then I'm going to change the color. So here I'll go text white, and then I'm going to set this to uppercase, and this needs to be font bold. So by adding these classes here, this is what our button looks like now. But now we need to add some padding on the left and the right and a little bit more on the top, because it has a little bit more breathing room than this. So let's go ahead and do padding on the X 12. Maybe that's a bit too large. So padding 8, and then padding on the Y axis, let's try 3. That's a little bit larger. So it's coming together. That's a little bit larger. Now it looks like there's some letter spacing going on here. So back here, let's search for letter spacing, and there it is there. And this is tracking normal, which is 0, and then tracking wide. So let's start with tracking wide. So I'll just copy that, and then I'll go ahead and apply that class here. So I'll just add that there and press enter. Doesn't seem to have updated that one. Let's go wider. So I'll copy and add that and enter. Let's try tracking widest. Go ahead and apply that. And that looks like it has in fact spaced that out a little bit. So now that we've gone and set up that button, I want to show you something that's quite important, because you're obviously going ahead and creating a lot of buttons on your website, and you might not want to go and add a button element like this and then apply all these CSS classes in here to get this style on every button that you create inside a Bricks Builder. So how can we go and minimize the amount of work that we use here? It's by coming back into Winden and then base CSS and adding a new component here for our button. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and just preview this on the front end like this, and I'm going to right click and inspect element. And here we can see that BRXE-button is a CSS class that Bricks adds for each button. If we go back and just went into here and added a button somewhere else, So let's go ahead and add a button element, and let's just add that up the top here just so it's easy for us to find, maybe in the header here. We'll delete it in just a second. Let's save this. And then back here, we've reloaded the page. I'll just right click and inspect element. We can see that on here, we also have that CSS class. So it's a CSS class. We can even use here bricks-button, one of those two. We go down. I think both of those are still on this one here as well. BRXE button, bricks button. So it does look like it adds that. We might actually just use the bricks button class. So if we know that every bricks button element that we add onto the page gets that CSS class, we can come into here into Winden and we can just go ahead and use that. So I can do .bricks button, and then in here we can apply, so at apply some Tailwind classes, and coming back into here, let's just say this is our default button color. We just want to apply all of these. So I'll just copy these from here and I'll paste them into here and copy from there just to clean it up, paste it in there, and then just get rid of the dots because we don't need the dots as you can see up here. You just need to write the Tailwind utility classes. So I'll just get rid of them and we'll end that off. So now if I save this and go back here for this button that we have here, I'm going to go ahead and just remove all these utility classes that we had applied to that button, like I've done that. And then I'll just save this and just reload the page. And now you can see our Tailwind classes are applying to the button elements here inside of Bricks Builder. And this default button that we just added before, you can see that it's applied up there. So I'll go ahead and just delete that. And now if you wanted to style this button, you'll just go ahead and do it under here and add more utility classes from Tailwind. Now, I was just editing this and I thought it'd be good to point out here that even though we've gone and set up inside of Winden here, if we go to base CSS, we've got our bricks button and we've applied these here, which is making it look like this. Let's just say we cloned this button. So I copied and pasted, and there it is there. Let's just say we actually want to make this button different to this one. So maybe we want its background color to be the navy. We could come up to here and go BG-navy and press enter. And now that overwrites it. So by default, it's going to get this, but we can still come in here and on a per element basis locally adjust its look using utility classes. That's why it's really, really good. And that's, that's basically what I thought I should point out at this point in time. Now, if we pull that down and just compare how they look, the font might be a little bit smaller over here. It does look like the letter spacing's even larger than we have it currently over here as well. So let's go ahead and tackle them. So we've already set the tracking at its widest, which is 0.1 ems. But if we go down the bottom, we should see how we can do it by our own variables here. So tracking, and we can set a custom value here. So if I just have our design on the right-hand side and then we're working on the left-hand side, let's just right-click and inspect elements. So here's the button, and then we'll look for the letter spacing 0.1 em. Let's just adjust this until we find what it could be. And I think that might be it, 0.15, maybe even a little bit larger, maybe 0.2. I think that's pretty good. So 0.2 em. So here, let's go ahead and get rid of tracking widest, and we'll just overwrite widest with this, and then we'll go 0.2 em and save changes. And then back here, let's reload the page, and you can see if we inspect element here now, this has 0.2 ems of letter spacing. So back in the builder, let's continue. I might actually swap the sides that they're on just to make it a little bit more meaningful in my head. So the default's on the left, and then we're going to grow to this on the right. So having a look, we need to add some spacing between here. So there's, let's have a look. Let's measure this out. There's about 30 pixels of margin there, or spacing. And then under here, we have, if we measure it out, 30 as well. And then under here, we have 30 as well. So it looks like there's even spacing here, here, and here. So to add the 30 pixels there, I'll just go ahead and add some margin at tops. So here on the post title, let's just go up to here and add, say, a margin top of 3. And then over here, I might add a margin top of, say, 3 again. And then here we'll do a margin top of 3 and press enter. I think it does need to be a bit larger for the buttons. So let's try a margin top of 5. I'll just pull that in and we'll just put the design over here. So I think this needs to be just a little bit bigger. So maybe a margin top of 4. And this one here, maybe a margin top of 6. I think that's looking pretty good. good. So I'll just get out of that. So now this text here looks like it needs to be black. So let's go up to here and go font black and press enter. And then it looks like it's the navy color that we registered. So let's go text navy and press enter. And then the text looks a little bit larger. So we could do text 4XL. And I'm just guessing here just to compare. We might need to click out of that just to see what it looks like. And I think that's looking pretty spot on. I am noticing that on the mobile here, the padding on the left and the right does look a lot larger than the mobile. Not quite sure how we missed that, but because that is set with our section class, we'll go back here into Winden, and then here under section, the PX6 for the default, let's just change that to something like 4, and then let's go ahead and save that. I'll just do that now. And then back here in the builder, that's auto refresh for us, and I think that looks exactly like it. So the padding's all fixed up there on the left and the right. I think maybe the spacing up the top here just needs to be a little bit larger, so I might just increment that from a margin top 4 to a margin top 5. So moving down, let's have a look at this sidebar here. So we need to add some padding around it, add the divider, space it out, change some font sizes. So let's get into it. So the first thing that we're going to do is go onto our sidebar here, and we're going to add the padding. So I'm going to try a padding of 5, and I think that looks pretty good. We can measure it as well. So I'll just might quickly do that. It's like 22 pixels and it's about the same, 22 pixels. So I think that's pretty good to go there. Now, next, let's size down the post title so it looks more like this. So I'm going to go, let's try text large. And I think that's a little bit too small. So I'll get rid of that. And let's try text XL, enter. And I think that is what we're looking for. I think that's pretty good. So next, let's go ahead and focus on adding the border in between the post. So to do that, I'm going to come onto my post loop item here. This is the item that repeats, and we're going to add a border on the top of it. So there'll be a border up here, a border up here, and a border up there. And then what we're going to do is we're going to hide this first border at the end. It'll make sense in a second. So let's go ahead and make a border on the top of all our posts here. So to do that, I'm going to go up here and write border hyphen and solid and press enter. And that's just a utility class from Tailwind. And you can see that we have a weird effect here. So let's save this and go to the front end and just reload the page. And you can see we're definitely not getting the result that we want. So what's happened here is it's applied a solid border around these posts. If I right click and go inspect element here and have a look. So here are our posts 1, 2, and 3. And they have a border going around the full width of the item, which is 1 pixel. It just looks like 2 pixels there because the bottom of this one is bumped up against the top of this one here. If we were to go ahead and add some CSS here, like a margin top 20 pixels, you'd see that it is actually just 1 border, but I'll just undo that. So the problem with this is we only want to have a border on the top. And to do that, as per the Tailwind docs, to add a border on the top that is 1 pixel, if we go back here and search here under borders, and we go to border width, and we go down to search for border hyphen T, which is here, border hyphen T sets a border top width of 1 pixel. But that's not actually going to work if we set that there. If we went up to here and we did border hyphen T and press enter, it's not going to have any visible effects because, okay, sure, we've set the border width on the top to be 1 pixel, but it was already 1 pixel. It's 1 pixel out of the box wide, but it's actually 1 pixel around the entire element. So I think this is a setting that's coming from Bricks and it's conflicting a little bit with Tailwind. Something's just not working here. So what we need to do is by default set all border widths on our website to be 0 pixels, and then we can come in and use something like border hyphen T to adjust just the top border width to be 1 pixel. So what I'll do, I'll go ahead and remove that now. So all we're doing is setting the border to be a solid border. So if I save this and have a look on the front end, if I reload, this is what it currently looks like. So let's go ahead and set the width of all borders on our website to be a default 0 width. So we'll do that here under Winden and then base CSS. And then at the bottom here, we'll just do a star. So we're selecting everything. And then here we'll do border width and we'll set this to 0. And I'll just save this. And now if we come back into here, you can see it automatically updates when you save in Winden here. It automatically updates in Bricks Builder. So this is in fact the live change after we just changed that. So now all border widths are set to 0. So now if we come up to here and do border -T and press enter, now only the border width on the top is 1 pixel and now it works. So just a weird quirk that I found and worth remembering because you might run into that in the future. But coming back into here, now that we have the top border here being 1 pixels wide and the style is solid, we need to set its color. So we're going to set the color for this border by doing border hyphen and then we just write the color. So back here in Winden, if I go to Tailwind config, it's going to be this grayish blue color. So I'll come into here, we'll do border hyphen grayish blue and press enter. And I think that might be just a bit too bright. I think we might have actually wanted this one dark grayish blue. So back in here, let's get rid of that and we'll do border dark grayish blue. And now that looks a lot better. So let's add some spacing here. So we'll come back into here and to add our spacing, we'll add a margin top and then some padding top. And that will make the border sit in between the margin and the padding. So here, let's go ahead and add a margin top of 7 and press enter. And I'll just save this and reload the page so you can see what that change just did. Because again, it's not updating live for some reason. It might be a bug. So this is what we currently have where the margin here is pushing the post above it away. And now we just need to add some padding in between here to push the heading away from the border. So up here, we'll add it equal. So we did a margin top of 7. So let's try a padding top of 7. And that way the border sits in the middle. So here we'll go padding top of 7 and press enter. Now we have a padding of 7 in here. And then we have a margin of 7 in here, which means the border sits in here. And the spacing up top and down the bottom is equal because they're both 7. So if we save this and preview it on the front end, this is what we have. But we need to remove the padding, margin, and border from this first post. So inside Tailwind docs, they actually have a really easy way to do this. So if we search for first of type and go into here, you can see that like when we're trying to target a specific breakpoint like medium and above, we can write MD and then colon and then our utility class. Tailwind has this first of type that we can use and then we put a colon and then we put a utility class and that only applies to the first of type inside there. And if you're not sure what first of type is, if we go to Google and type first of type CSS and just go into this one here and have a look, if we had an article with a H1 in there and 3 paragraph tags in there, and then we did a P colon first of type and we set its font size to 1.25, the font size for the first P element in there would be increased to 1.25, which would be this one here. So coming back to our element here that repeats, if we just exit out of that, we could do a first of type and then a colon, and then we set the padding top to be 0. And now that's only affected this first one here, the first of type. I'll get out of that and we'll do it again. And then we'll do the margin top and we'll set that to 0. And lastly, we just need to do the border. So first of type and we'll do border T0 and press enter, which makes the border top a 0 width. So let's save this and then come back here and reload the page. And now you can see it's definitely coming together. So sticking with our mobile layout here, I'll just get out of editing that. Let's add some spacing here. So I'm going to do that on the heading here. So let's go ahead and add a margin bottom of something like 6, maybe a bit more. So a margin bottom of 7. And I think that's pretty good. Now, just looking at this, it looks like this actual navy padding, there might be a little bit, like the slightest bit more padding on the top and the bottom. So the Y axis versus the X. So if we go back here to our navy sidebar, we do have a padding of 5 all around. So let's undo that and we'll set this to a padding X to 5. And then maybe we'll set the padding Y to something like 6, just so there is a little bit more spacing top and bottom. And that should cover most to do with our navy sidebar here on the mobile first layout. Now, there is one thing that is obvious here that we need to go and adjust, and that's going to be the amount of text here for the excerpt. You can see over here, there's 2 lines of text over here, but over here we have 3. Now, that could be an easy fix where we click into here and we just change the excerpt from 13 to 12 and so on. But I want to show you a cool feature that you can use inside Tailwind to control the number of lines that are output here in a design. So coming back to Tailwind docs, if we search for line clamp, you can see that it's tagged as being a plugin. So if we click into this, you can see line clamp, the @Tailwind line clamp plugin plugin adds line clamp lines. This is a CSS class sort of format. Classes that you can use to truncate text to a fixed number of lines. And I definitely need to learn more about what a plugin is inside of Tailwind, but as far as what I've learned from going ahead and doing these videos and making websites, they're basically like WordPress. You have the core functionality or the utility classes of Tailwind, and then you can install plugins that give you extra utility classes that you can leverage to build your website. So this one here is a plugin for line clamping. So how do we go and install that? Let's click on this here, learn more about it. And if we go down, it shows us that here inside of our Tailwind config module.exports, we have our theme. So if we go back and we go into Winden, in our Tailwind config, we have our theme, which is where we added our colors and our max width from before. And then under here, we have plugins that has no values in there. So all we need to do is just copy this little bit of code from here and then go here and open up the square brackets and then paste that in there and then save this. And now we should have access to the line clamp utility classes. So I'm just going to go back to the builder and save this and then reload. And you can see going down here to clamp it to 3 lines, we do line-clamp-3. And we also have access to the breakpoints where we can do MD : and then change it. So coming back to our design here, now that I've reloaded it, we should have access to those classes. If I click on the excerpt here, let's add a CSS class here, line-clamp-2 and press enter. If we click back into this, let's just say there's no limit on the excerpt. So I'll get rid of that. So we just have our post excerpt tag there. So I'll save this and I'll just remove this line clamp CSS class for now. So save. So you can see that that's all there. And then let's go ahead and add it again. So line clamp 2 and press enter. And now that's clamped it to the 2 lines. So let's save this, go back and reload the page. And you can see this is in fact 2 lines. If I right click and inspect element here and we go down and just look at the content inside there, you can see that there is in fact a lot more content inside there. It's just being hidden to the 2 lines. And if we bring it in, it will just maintain that as well. So yeah, this would be a really good example of why it's good that we're using the most popular CSS framework, because it covers a lot of use cases and they've implemented ways to go out and do pretty much anything that we can think of, because so many people are using it and have so many use cases, being able to mature and do really cool things like this that save us a lot of time and get the result that we want for our websites a lot faster. But as far as the mobile version for this navy sidebar is concerned, I think that's pretty good to go. So now let's go ahead and finish off these gaming posts. So we'll add some spacing up the top and the bottom here. So I'll come back in to the wrap, which is here, and we should probably measure this. So let's go ahead and just measure that out there. So it's about 65 pixels. So coming back here, if we search for padding and go down here, looking for about 65 pixels. We have 64 here for 16. So here I'm going to do PY for padding top and I'll do 16 and press enter. That looks pretty good. I did notice that these are actually reversed, these posts here. So I've just added them in the wrong order into WordPress. So that's why this is the most recent here, but it was actually the 3rd most recent down here. Let's just ignore that for today's video. Now, next, let's go ahead and style this post title here. So I might go text LG for large, see what that looks like. I think that looks pretty good, actually. We're going to set the text to be the navy color. That's worked. And then we'll make it font black and press enter. Now it's a bit darker because it just needs to be a bit more bold. Now I can see that this excerpt here is to 2 lines. So let's go ahead and add our line clamp here. So I'll come up and go line clamp and 2 and press enter. So now that's gone ahead and updated. And then let's add some spacing. So our post title, let's do a margin top of something like 2. And then on the excerpt, we could do a margin top of 2 as well. I think that's pretty good. And then we need to space out the posts themselves. Now there's a couple of different ways that we could space out these posts. So one way that we could do it is we could go ahead and set a margin top and then just reset it on the first item to be 0. So what we did with the border up there, just something similar. So to do that here with our post item, we'd go up to here and do a margin top of say 10. So that would output it like that. And then we just need to remove it from the first one. So to do that, we will just go here and we'd go first of type colon margin top 0 and press enter. And now that has removed it from the first one, but the ones under that are getting the margin top applied. So that's probably the easiest way to go about doing that. But there is in fact another way that we could use to do this, and that is using a Tailwind capability or utility class called space. So let's go ahead and I'm just going to undo this margin top setup that we just did, and I want to show you this spacing example. So coming back into the Tailwind docs, let's search for space between and go into here. So here are all the classes, and it's the ability to control space between child elements. And if we go down, you can see here's an example. So if we had a div with 3 divs inside it, so if we did a space on the y-axis of 4, you can see that these 3 divs are spaced out, and on the y-axis they have a 4, which is 1 rem, so 16 pixels in between them. So you're setting this on the parent and it affects the spacing of the child elements. So coming back into here, this post item down here, this part here is the part that loops. This is the repeating item. So this is actually a child. So if we want to space out the children, we would need to come up here to the parent and set the space here. So on the parent, we would go space Y, and we could set this to something like 10, for example, and press enter. And now that's spaced them out on the Y axis, the children inside there, 10. So space Y10. And if we find out what that would be in pixels, if I search for space Y10, that would add 40 pixels between the 2 child elements. So there's 40 pixels in here that has just been calculated. So I think that's just a little bit too big. So we're just going to reduce that from a 10 to something like space Y of 9 and press enter. And I think that spacing there is exactly what we were looking for. So there are 2 different options that we could use to tackle this, the margin on the top and then the space. And for this, I'm going to stick with the space that we just set up. So now let's go ahead and go to the excerpt, and we need to change the text color. So I'm going to set this to the text, and back here, I want to set this to the dark grayish blue. So I'll set text dark grayish blue. And then lastly, we just need to style the counter. So the counter is going to be this grayish blue color here. So I'll set that. So we'll go text grayish blue and enter. I think that might be a bit too light. I'm not sure. Let's go font black and then try text for XL, a bit bigger. And actually, I think that does look correct. It is the right font color. And I think this pretty much matches that over there. So let's save this and I'll just reload the page. And I think the only thing that I might want to reduce is the spacing between these elements in here. So if we click back into here, we have the counter, post title, and excerpt. And on these, we did go and add the margin top to them. Let's actually go and show you the benefit of using the spacing example that we set up before. So if I want to reduce this margin top on the excerpt, post title, and counter, I would need to go and adjust it for the post title. So where it says margin top 2, I would need to edit that. And then I need to edit the excerpt. With the spacing, I only need to edit it on the parent, and it updates for all the children. That's why I like the spacing. So let's remove the margin top 2 and then here the margin top 2. And then let's click on the parent and let's go space Y and let's try 1 and press enter. So now the children inside here have 1 spacing. And if we ever need to update that in the future, all I need to do is edit it here on the parent and it will update for all the children. And with that last change, I think this is looking really close to the design that we set out to do today. If we go up, it really is coming together. If we just keep scrolling up, with the sidebars looking really nice and, what we're trying to create. Going up here, that's looking good as well. So now that we've finished the mobile first approach, let's move into the other breakpoints and matching the design that we're creating. So let's jump in and finalize this design for the desktop version. So this is going to trigger from our medium breakpoint and then up. Now, if we have a look at our design, we've been given the larger format over here. So we don't have this medium breakpoint here. We have this one here. So I'm actually going to go ahead and make the changes just over here with this breakpoint active, but any utility classes that we apply will be applied for our medium breakpoint and greater. And then at the end, when our design in here inside Bricks Builder looks like this design in here, then what I'll do is I might jump back to the medium breakpoint and just tidy up anything that might need tweaking at this medium breakpoint. But I don't think there's going to be much. I think if we actually get this design here looking like our reference, we should be pretty much finished for today's video. So having a look at what we currently have and comparing it to the design line over here, we have a couple of different things. So I think the best thing to do is just to make this full screen over here, and then we'll just jump backwards and forwards like that. So having a look at our design here, I can see that this heading over here needs to be larger because it definitely gets a bit bigger over here. And then the bottom of this button over here aligns with the bottom of our navy sidebar, which we don't currently have. And you can see there's some spacing over here, which needs to be larger, which will push this down over here. Then you can see that these posts here all line up nice and neat. And coming back into here, they aren't doing that there. And that's because we have that spacing from the mobile. So if we go down and have a look at what we did before, which would be on this here, we have a space on the y-axis of 9, and that's carrying through to over here. So there's a space of 9 here and a space of 9 there. So we just need to reset that. So a couple of things to do. I don't think it's going to take much effort here on our behalf. So let's jump in and start doing this. So coming back here, let's get this font size accurate. So having a look here, if I was just to measure out the height of this T here, we're looking at about 42 pixels high. So coming back here, let's change this. So we want to prefix this just for our medium breakpoints and larger. And what is it currently? So this is currently a text 4XL. So here for our medium device breakpoints and greater, we could try text 5XL and enter. And I'll just get out of that. And then let's measure this T here. And if we have a look, that's about 37. So let's make it one larger. So for our medium and greater, we'll go text 6XL and press enter and get out of this. And then let's measure that now. And that is going to be 47. And we were trying to do 42. So it's a little bit larger there, but I think the other one was too small. So I think toggling backwards and forwards between these two designs here, I think that's pretty good. It's as close as we're going to get without having to set up some custom utility classes for our Tailwind config. So we'll settle there at the text being 6XL. Now coming back to this text, I just realized we never changed the color of it. So let's go ahead. It's going to be the same color as down here, which is going to be text dark grayish blue. So we'll click over to here and I'll apply the text dark grayish blue and apply that. And that's going to apply for all the different breakpoints. So that's all set up now. So inside here, we want to align this button to the bottom of this column. And we also want to have 4 lines of text here. And we currently only have 3. So firstly, let's click on the excerpt and I'm going to get rid of this limit there. So it'll output the entire excerpt. And then to limit it to 4 lines, we'll use our line clamp utility class. So here, actually, if we go back and have a look at the mobile and go up 1, 2, 3, 4, it's 4 lines there as well. So we might want to limit that on all devices. So we'll just apply a line clamp of 4 here and press enter and get out of that. Now it applies for all the breakpoints. And now to align this bottom down the bottom, if we go to post content, see how it's bounding box, the green box, this box here, it's not reaching the bottom of the navy. But if we go up 1 here to the featured post, it is. So coming back down here, we just need to align this box at the bottom of this box here. So to do that, we can just make this a grid. And then we can write content between and press enter. And what that means is this is converted to a grid now, this featured post, which is the whole entire area here. And then inside that, the first child, so the post image, is going to be positioned up the top. So it's flush along here. And then the last child, which is going to be this one here, because there's only 2 children in there, this is going to be positioned at the bottom of our featured post, which pushes the content down the bottom. Now to clarify what I just did with the content between, if we go to the Tailwind docs and I look for align content and we scroll right to the top, we have these utility classes, content center, start, and content between, which is what we just used. Utility classes for controlling how rows are positioned in multi-row flex and grid containers. So you can see the content start puts them at the start of the parent. And if we go down, this is at the center, so vertically aligned in the center. And if we go down, this is the end of the content. And if I go down here, this is what we just used. So the content is at the content between. The first child is right at the start of the bounding box, the parent, and the last child is at the end. And that's what's happening here. And then we have space in between, so content between. So by adding our content between class on our featured post here, the first child is up the top, so that aligns along here. And then the last child is positioned at the bottom because remember, here's one of those rows, and then the second row is down here. And so that aligns this down the bottom over here. here and aligns the first child up the top over there. So that's just what we did there. So if we go to our medium device breakpoint, this makes it more evident where the image, so the top up here is up the top and then there's space between, and then this second one, the post content, is positioned at the bottom. Now there's too much room here. So what I'm thinking is we need to actually come up here and we need to not apply this for the medium breakpoint, but we need to pick one that's a little bit larger. So this one here, it's still not going to work there as there's too much space here. But if we go up to maybe XL, I think we could safely do it here. So back here on our featured post where we've applied our grid and then content between, let's only apply these for our XL breakpoint and up. So this is a really good example of where that plain classes for Bricks Builder, that plugin that's soon to be released, is going to make our lives a lot easier. I could quickly come into here and write XL colon here before grid and XL colon here before content between. But for now, I'm going to need to go ahead and reset them. So XL will apply a grid. So XL and up. And then I'll do XL and up, we'll do content between and press enter. And then we just remove grid and we remove content between. So now if we go back to the medium, it's not applying. So I think that looks quite good. And then if we go up to our XL breakpoint, now you can see it's pushed down the bottom. And if we go up here, it retains it. Now coming back to the medium breakpoint, I feel like if we go from medium to large, I think a better format until it reaches the XL breakpoint might be if we actually just had the title going the full width of the page and then the excerpt and button were under that. So we only want to apply that from medium, large, and then our XL would take over. So let's go back to here and it's going to be on our post content here. If I just collapse that, we have 2 columns. So currently this is a medium and up. It's a col grids 2. So let's go ahead and only apply this 2 column grid when it reaches our XL breakpoint. So I'm going to get rid of that and I'm going to write XL grid col 2 and press enter. So I think that's looking a bit better. And if we go down here, there's a lot of space there. So back on the excerpt, you can see we have a margin top of 4 there. So at our medium breakpoint, let's do a margin top of 0. So we remove it. And I think maybe we might scale this font down just a little bit at this breakpoint. So where we have medium and up, the text is 6XL. Let's get rid of that. And at the medium, let's do text 5XL, enter. And then for our XL breakpoint and up, we'll do text 6XL and scale it up. Now on the excerpt, let's go ahead and just remove the margin top here for medium and up. So medium and up, margin top 0. And then back here on the post content, we have medium and up, the gap is 8. So we want to remove that and only apply that for the XL breakpoint, gap 8, and press enter. And because we removed the gap here, let's just quickly go back and add that margin top back in. So let's try and just remove them. I think that's looking better. So margin top 4 for all the breakpoints. So I think that's looking a lot better. So default, it looks like this. And then as we go through the different breakpoints, it reaches here. It's still 1 column and we don't have any gaps here. So we're using margin top still. And then as it gets to our XL breakpoint, then our gaps kick in and it's 2 columns like that. So having a look at this here versus that there, I think that's pretty close. The font's a little bit smaller here, but we addressed that at the start of today's video. But besides that, I think that's pretty spot on for this top section. So with this area done, let's go down and finalize the bottom. So if I go up to this gaming category wrap, you can see we have a space on the y-axis of 9. And that's why it's getting space added up the top here, because if we go down to the mobile, we need that space between the items. But when we go up to our medium breakpoint, we want to remove it. So to do that, we just do medium and up, space Y0 and enter. Now that brings them up the top. And it's a little bit cramped there, but as we go to the large breakpoint, definitely looking a lot better. And as we go up and reach our final breakpoint for the largest devices, this design here looks pretty much exactly like this. The fonts, again, the font sizes are just a little bit larger for the body copy in ours versus here. But if I just toggle between these, you can see that we're pretty spot on here. In our design, we've managed to line up this using the grid. The tops of our images over here all align. We have our counter there. We only have 2 lines of text here here. And remember that has the line clamp of 2 lines there applied. So I think that should finish it off. So what I want to do now is just go ahead and save our design. And before we go through and preview the final design through all the responsive breakpoints, we need to look at the hover and active states. So this is our default state here. And then if I go to this image, this is our active or hover states. So looking at this button, it goes from our soft red to the navy. Hovering on here goes from white text to the orange text. And down here goes from the navy to the soft red. So I think that's all we need to set up. And then obviously on the menu up here, we need to change that as well. So I'm going to keep this one up for now. Let's go back here and let's work top to bottom, starting with the menu. So clicking on our menu, if we go to our top level menu, so with our menu, we want to change the hover state. So in Bricks Builder, to change the hover state, we go up here. So states, we click, and then over here, we go hover. And then while editing our menu, if we go down, we want to change the typography. So I'll click here, and then our color, if we go down, we want to set this to our soft red. So back here in Winden and in our Tailwind config, I know it was a while since we went and set this up in this video today. It's probably like a couple of hours ago. So I'll just quickly refresh your memory on what we did. But I would recommend if you jump to this part in the video to watch the color swatches area in today's video. There's a chapter down below in the description. But having a look here, what we did is we went into our base CSS and we set up some CSS variables here for our color palette. So the one that we want to be using right now is going to be this red color up here. So that is called soft red. So we created a CSS variable called color soft red. And then here in Tailwind config, we registered our colors, and for the colors in Tailwind, we actually assigned that CSS variable, which is here for the red. So what we want to do is we want to come down here for the soft red and just copy this variable and come back into here, and we want to go to raw, and then here we'll write var, and then in brackets add our CSS variable, and then we want to click save to save it, and now it's in our color swatches. So now with our hover state selected, under typography, we've assigned this variable, which is going to be here, color soft red. So if we save this and then preview it on the front end, if I hover, we should see that soft red color, as you can see. Now we also want to go ahead and set the active state. So coming back here, clicking on our menu, I've just clicked out of the hover area here, the hover state, and we'll go down because we have this active typography setting. So if I click here and go to color, we have our swatch there. So I can click on that as well and click save. Now on the front end, when we hover, we get that. So now we have that hover state. And if I was to click into, say, the new category, then this would become the actively selected menu item, and this would be the orange as well. So that's setting up the menu there. So coming down there, let's create this button here. Now, if we go back into Winden and go up to base CSS, remember for our bricks button, we're applying these classes here. So what we could actually go and do here is we could just create a new one down here. So bricks button hover, and then inside here, we could apply our background navy class to it and click save changes. And now on the front end, if we reload, when we hover on our buttons, they get that navy color. So that's how we would handle that. Now the orange over here and the red down here. Back in here, let's click on the post title here. And because these are classes that we've registered inside the Tailwind framework, we can use utility classes for this. So instead of going up to bricks and doing our hover state here, because you can't just apply CSS classes based on a hover state over here, we want to use utility classes for this. So up here, I'm going to write hover and then colon, and we'll do text hyphen, and then we need to get the name of that orange color in Tailwind config, which is going to be soft orange. So I'll do soft orange and press enter. So if I save that and go to the front end and reload, now when we hover, we have that soft orange color. And the same down here. So I'll click on the post title, and then here I'll do hover and then colon, and this is going to be text soft red, and press enter. So now let's save that. And back here, let's reload the front end. And if I hover down here, we have that red color. So the red color down here, the button goes blue, this goes orange, and this goes red up there. So that's going to end today's video. If you did like this style of video, definitely let me know in the comments below, because I do want to put more of these together. They do take a lot of time. And so I really only want to do this style of video if it's going to be helpful for a lot of people, or I can just revert back to doing these shorter style videos that I've been doing on my YouTube channel where they're about 10 minutes and they just explain one particular thing. So let me know in the comments below if you found this longer format video helpful. If you're looking for a video to watch next, I just go to my YouTube channel and either watch one that is on the screen right now that YouTube is recommending that will be the best fit for you, or going and watching this one here, Bricks Interaction. actions. Inside there, I show you a new feature that's going to be launched inside of Bricks Builder in the next stable version. So don't forget to like today's video, and I'll see you in one of those videos.